Chapter 192. Rong, don't worry. Your Grandpa Jian is fine. Maybe it's a good thing for him to lose. Gu Rong patted Ning Rongrong's head and comforted her. I've mastered the Tao of Sword. How did I lose? How did I lose? On the battlefield, Sword Doluo Chen Xian gradually regained his senses. He stared at Chu Bei, his eyes full of confusion. He had lost the previous duel of Tao of Sword. If the other party hadn't held back, that sword strike wouldn't have just shattered his robe, but would have sliced him in half along with his body. Chu Bei looked at Chen Xian with a smile. How long have you studied the sword? Chen Xian said. 93 years. Chu Bei asked again. What do you think of your Tao of Sword? Chen Xian said. I've mastered it. Before I met you, my Tao of Sword was number 1 on the continent. No one could compete with me. Chu Bei continued. Since you've mastered it, why did you lose to me? Chen Xian choked. Well, Chu Bei continued. Do you know the mystery of Tao of Sword? Chen Xian said word by word. The unity of man and sword. Chu Bei shook his head. Chen Xian frowned deeper. Tell me. Chu Bei stared into the distance and said softly. No sword. Chen Xian looked confused. No sword? Chu Bei looked straight at Chen Xian. Only when you have no sword in your heart can you be considered to have mastered the Tao of Sword. If you have no sword in your heart, you can use every move as a sword. Pointing your fingers is a sword. Putting your fingers together is also a sword. The sword is everywhere. No sword in my heart. No sword in my heart. No sword in my heart. Chen Xian repeated these 4 syllables. The confusion on his face gradually disappeared and his eyes became clear again. I don't understand it yet, but I seem to understand something. Chen Xian said something inexplicable. Then he asked, What's the name of your previous move? The 25th blade. Chu Bei said faintly. This was a sword move he had borrowed from the system. It was derived from the Saint Spirit sword technique created by the Sword Saint of the Wind and Cloud Plane. However, the Sword Saint had only used the 23 swords. As for the 25 swords, it was created by the system based on the 25 swords. Its power was even more terrifying. 25th blade? Chen Xian frowned. Is this the 25th sword move? How many more swords do you have? The highest form, sword 99. Chu Bei said slowly. Hearing this, Chen Xian took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with shock. After a long while, Chen Xian landed beside Ning Fingji and said, Suzerain, I've learned something from the previous battle. I'm going into seclusion for a while. After saying this, Chen Xian walked to Ning Rongrong's side and squatted down. His eyes were full of affection. Rongrong, Grandpa Jian is fine. I'm not hurt anywhere. Look, you're crying so much. If you're going to leave with that grandpa in the sky later, remember to be obedient. Don't throw a tantrum. With him by your side, no one should be able to hurt you. Chen Xian wiped the tears from the corners of Ning Rongrong's eyes. He looked up at Chu Bei in the sky and waved his sword. Thank you for your guidance. Rongrong is a little naughty, but she's very kind. I hope you can teach her well. Of course. Chu Bei nodded calmly. After I break through, I'll ask for your guidance. Chen Xian clasped his hands at Chu Bei and rose into the sky. As if he had learned something about the way of the sword, he couldn't wait to fly northeast. Before leaving, Chen Xian glanced at Xiao Wu, who was not far away. He wanted to say something, but stopped. Did Elder Jian lose? That guy won. How could this be? They were competing in sword skills. Who is that titled Doluo? Looking at Sword Doluo Chen Xian's back, the disciples and elders who were watching the battle in the hall came back to their senses. After the shock, they looked back at Chu Bei with disbelief. Xiao Wu, I told you. Boss is very strong. Oscar tilted his head and looked at Xiao Wu. Xiao Wu frowned slightly and didn't say anything. She just looked at Chu Bei with more shock in her eyes. She knew that the boss she followed was quite strong, but she didn't expect him to be so strong. Even the sword Doluo, the strongest human in the way of the sword, was defeated by him. Furthermore, it was in the sword domain. Sect leader, now you believe what I said. You didn't do anything in the Great Stardo Forest, but you managed to force the Titan giant ape back. Ning Feng looked at Ning Fengji and couldn't help but say this. His eyes were full of respect for Chu Bei. Ning Fengji and Gu Rong looked at each other. They were also shocked by this result. You can all leave now. After a long while, Ning Fengji glanced at the disciples and elders who were gathered together, and said faintly. Hearing this, the disciples and elders bowed to Ning Fengji and immediately left. Sect leader Ning, do you still remember what you said before? Chu Bei landed in front of Ning Fengji and asked calmly. Since you've won, I will fulfill my promise. Ning Fengji looked at Chu Bei very politely and paused for a moment before saying, However, as a father, I really want to know why you chose my daughter. She hasn't even awakened her martial soul. I once divined the heavens and saw that she was fated to be with me. Chu Bei made up a story. Then how can I make my daughter your proxy? Ning Fengji was curious. Chu Bei pointed his finger and a red light flashed past. The proxy ring was directly placed on Ning Rongrong's index finger. This is my keepsake. With blood as the medium, you can become my first-rank proxy and be protected by me at all times. Chu Bei continued. Do you want me to drip my blood on this ring? Ning Rongrong gently bit her lips. After meeting Chu Bei's encouraging gaze, she looked at the silent Ning Fengji. Then, she took a deep breath and bit her index finger. Host has successfully signed first-rank proxy Ning Rongrong. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress, 23%. Progress, 24%. Progress, 25%. The moment Xiaowu dripped her blood on the proxy ring, the system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind. When the system's voice stopped, the Dou-Qi continent's cultivation conversion progress had already changed from 22% to 32%. At the end of the progress bar, it showed that Chu Bei's current cultivation in the Doluo continent was rank 45 Soul Ancestor. Looking at the proxy interface, Ning Rongrong's name was added to the list. Chu Bei's appearance was getting younger, and he looked about the same age as Ning Fengji. Sir, why don't you wait until Rongrong's martial soul awakens next year before following you? Gu Rong seemed to be a little worried and couldn't help but ask. Sect Master Ning, give your little girl 100,000 soul coins. I'll make the first deal with her first. Chu Bei ignored Gu Rong and looked at Ning Fengji. No need, no need. I have 100,000 soul coins. Ning Rongrong took out a sleeve pouch soul tool and took out 20,000 soul coins and handed it to Chu Bei. Chu Bei's mouth twitched slightly, as expected of a child from a rich family. Then, Chu Bei waved his hand and two pills, one red and one blue, floated in front of Ning Rongrong. The system has received 1,000 willpower. The host has received 500 willpower. Sir, may I ask what this is? Ning Fengji frowned. You'll know soon enough. Chu Bei smiled and gave Ning Rongrong a look. Then, I'll eat it. Ning Rongrong carefully threw the two different colored pills into her mouth. Father, Grandpa Gu, look! Not long after the two pills entered her mouth, Ning Rongrong seemed to feel something strange in her body and subconsciously raised her right hand. A gorgeous light surged in her palm and gradually condensed into the shape of a 9-story pagoda. This is a martial soul. It's the 9 treasures glazed pagoda. Seeing the 9-story pagoda condensed in Ning Rongrong's palm, Ning Fengji and Gu Rong suddenly trembled and a strong sense of shock surged on their faces. What followed was an expression of joy and excitement that could not be expressed in words. Sir, are these the effects of the 2 pills? Calming down the excitement in his heart, Ning Fengji took a deep breath and looked back at Chu Bei with more respect. Before Chu Bei could respond, Ning Rongrong's body rippled with a wisp of aura. Innate full soul power! Sensing the rank 10 soul power ripple from Ning Rongrong's body, Ning Fengji and Gu Rong looked at each other again and were extremely shocked. At this moment, They could no longer use words to describe the shock in their hearts. From what they knew, martial souls could only be awakened at the age of 6. But now, Ning Rongrong had awakened her martial soul before she reached that age. Not only that, it was innate full soul power. What made Ning Fingji feel the most incredulous was that Ning Rongrong's martial soul was not the 7 treasures glazed pagoda, but the 9 treasures glazed pagoda. Although the 7 treasures glazed pagoda and the 9 treasures glazed pagoda were only 2 stories apart, the actual difference was like heaven and earth. The 7 treasures glazed pagoda martial soul could only have 7 soul rings at most. After a soul master with this martial soul cultivated to the level of a soul sage, his abilities could not continue to increase. But the 9 treasures glazed pagoda could be cultivated to the level of a titled doluo. In other words, Ning Rongrong would go much further than Ning Fingji. He also knew that whether it was the awakening of her martial soul in advance, the 9 treasures glazed pagoda, or innate full soul power, it was all related to the 2 pills that Ning Rongrong had swallowed. "Father, I've awakened my martial soul in advance. This is great." Finally, Ning Rongrong reacted and exclaimed excitedly. "Sect Master Ning, can I bring your daughter away now?" Chu Bei's calm voice sounded again. "Sir, if I miss Rongrong, where should I find you?" Ning Fingji asked. "Fastno Province, Holy Soul Village." After he finished speaking, Chu Bei waved his hand and brought Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and Xiao Wu onto the spatial shuttle. "Uncle Gu, don't you feel that the aura of the little girl beside that person is a little strange?" Ning Fingji looked at Gu Rong as the spatial shuttle disappeared into the distance. "That's 100,000-year soul beast." Gu Rong squinted his eyes and said slowly. "What? 1,000,000-year soul beast?" Ning Fingji's pupils shrank. "Didn't you notice that little boy? He's only 7 or 8 years old, but he's already a 21-year-old soul grandmaster." Gu Rong continued. Ning Fingji was stunned. After a long while, he muttered, "Who exactly is he? Since when did such an existence exist on the continent? If that's the case, Rongrong's talent is already comparable to that 100,000-year soul beast and that little boy. Maybe this is really Rongrong's opportunity," Gu Rong said. After leaving the 7 treasures glazed sect, Chu Bei brought Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and Xiao Wu to the nearby soul beast forest. With Chu Bei's help, Ning Rongrong obtained her first soul ring. Oscar borrowed Ning Rongrong's little treasury to buy 9 soul grandmaster pills and became a 30-star soul grandmaster. After that, Chu Bei found a suitable soul beast for Oscar. After obtaining its soul ring, he directly became a soul elder. As for Xiao Wu, perhaps she was still wary of Chu Bei, so she didn't need the latter's help in her cultivation. "Boss, where are we going tomorrow?" As night fell, Oscar snuggled up to Chu Bei and asked before he went to sleep. "Star Luo Empire, Imperial City." Chu Bei spat out 4 words. The next day. The Star Luo Empire, one of the 2 great empires on the continent. Under the azure sky, the palace's golden glazed roof appeared especially splendid. Ancient trees towered into the sky around the palace, giving it a shade. The inner pillars of the palace were supported by many huge red pillars. Every pillar had a spiraling, lifelike golden dragon engraved on it. It was exceptionally spectacular. The 2 dragons on the cornice had golden scales and golden armor. They were so lifelike that they seemed to want to soar into the sky. At this moment, there were over 100 soldiers patrolling outside the palace with spears in their hands. They surrounded 4 figures in the middle. "Boss, aren't we breaking the rules?" Oscar was a little nervous as he looked at the stern-looking soldiers around them. "Remember, in any place, strength is the most important thing. As long as you're strong enough, you won't be restricted by any rules." Chu Bei smiled. "Arrogant fool! Trespassers of the palace will die." Hearing Chu Bei's words, the leading soldier's eyes surged with murderous intent. He shouted angrily and charged toward Chu Bei with his spear. However, he was sent flying by an invisible force when he was within 10 meters of Chu Bei. He crashed heavily onto the ground. "Who the hell are you?" Looking at the leader who was struggling on the ground, the soldiers looked at Chu Bei, who had a mocking look in his eyes. They were obviously more vigilant. Go and inform your emperor. Even if there's a guest who wants to see his youngest son. Chu Bei put his hands behind his back. After he spoke calmly, he ignored the soldiers around him and led Oscar and the other two to the main palace unhurriedly. At this moment, the Star Luo Emperor was in the morning court with the civil and military officials in the main palace. What's happening outside? Not long after, the Star Luo Emperor heard the commotion outside the palace. Before the civil and military officials could find out the reason, a soldier ran into the palace anxiously and knelt on the long red carpet. Who's so arrogant? Is His Majesty someone that anyone can see just because they want to? After hearing the soldier's account, the faces of the civil and military officials were immediately filled with rage. I'm very curious about this person's background. Let's go and take a look. On the main seat in the palace, a middle-aged man wearing a dragon robe and a crown stood up from the dragon throne. After he spoke with a vigorous voice, he walked out of the palace. After the civil and military officials looked at each other, they hurriedly followed him. After the civil and military officials, two more figures quickly ran to the left and right of the Star Luo Emperor. They were a boy of 11 or 12 and a youth of 16 or 17. Chapter 193. How dare you? Do you know where you are? A white-haired elder following behind the Star Luo Emperor stepped forward when he saw that Chu Bei was ignoring the soldiers around him. He shouted, and a strong aura was released from his body. After he shouted, the white-haired elder's eyes lit up before Chu Bei could say anything. His body suddenly expanded. Following this, his 8 soul rings lit up. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a 7-meter-long, bright golden tiger. With a whoosh, the golden tiger exerted strength from its back and pounced towards Chu Bei. As the white-haired old man was not far from Chu Bei to begin with, he only needed to stretch his body before the sharp claws of the golden tiger that he had transformed into arrived in front of Chu Bei. You should give me time to talk. Chu Bei looked at the white-haired elder and shook his head. He felt a little helpless as he clenched his fist and punched out. This punch wasn't fancy at all. It looked very simple and straightforward. However, it was this punch that unleashed a terrifying energy when it collided with the golden tiger's claws. Boom! A deafening explosion rang out in the palace. The golden tiger was sent flying by this punch. It crashed into the main hall's roof beam not far behind it. Amidst the sounds of collapsing roofs and tiles, the golden tiger turned back into the white-haired old man from before. The 8 soul rings on his body had already dimmed. His clothes were torn, his face was pale, and there was fresh blood at the corner of his mouth. His aura was extremely weak. So strong! He actually defeated the rank 86 soul Doluo with a single punch. Who is this intruder? I'm afraid only those from the Martial Soul Hall would dare to be so arrogant. Did you see his soul rings light up earlier? What's his martial soul? Looking at the white-haired old man smashed into the wall of the hall, the civil and military officials were first stunned. When they recovered, they all stared at Chu Bei, their eyes filled with astonishment. The Star Luo Emperor's pupils constricted, and then he frowned. His gaze towards Chu Bei had an additional trace of vigilance. Your Majesty, he is very strong. After the white-haired old man wiped away the blood at the corner of his mouth, he flew out of the wall and arrived beside the Star Luo Emperor. The Star Luo Emperor glanced at the white-haired old man and nodded. His gaze returned to Chu Bei. Exactly what do you intend to do by forcefully trespassing into the Imperial Palace? The Starnet Emperor's eyes narrowed as he spoke with an icy cold voice, and his words revealed a strand of dignity. Do you think I can meet you in a normal way? Chu Bei laughed. See me? The Star Luo Emperor was perplexed. Could it be that I'm incompetent in governing the country? Chu Bei shook his head. Then, he extended his hand and pointed at the 11 or 12-year-old boy beside the Star Luo Emperor. To be more precise, I came for him. Me? Seeing Chu Bei pointing at him, the little boy was clearly at a loss out of fear. Yes, it's you. Chu Bei nodded slightly and replied indifferently. The Star Luo Emperor looked at his youngest son, Dai Mubai, and asked, Mubai, you know him? Replying to Imperial Father, this is the first time I've seen him. The boy was very certain. Hearing this, the Star Luo Emperor's gaze returned to Chu Bei. This time, I came to take him away and give him my inheritance. Chu Bei did not mention the matter of the first-rank agent. Instead, he changed the way he spoke. Haha, you must be joking. After the Star Luo Emperor recovered from his astonishment, he said, The people of the imperial family have the evil-eyed white tiger's inheritance. There is no need for them to join other forces. My inheritance does not conflict with your imperial family's inheritance. Chu Bei continued. Then may I know what you want to pass on to Mubai? The Star Luo Emperor was interested. I can only experience it personally. It's inconvenient to say. Chu Bei purposely kept it in suspense. May I know if the three little fellows behind you have accepted your inheritance? The Star Luo Emperor looked at Oscar, Xiao Wu, and Ning Rongrong. Chu Bei looked at the Star Luo Emperor with a smile as if he had guessed the latter's intention. Since that's the case, why don't you let Mubai spar with your disciples? Let's see if my evil-eyed white tiger's inheritance or yours is stronger. The Star Luo Emperor was proud. Imperial Father, you mustn't. I'm afraid I won't be able to control my strength well and accidentally injure them. Dai Mubai looked at Oscar and the other two who were only 7 or 8 years old, and hurriedly said, You can't hurt them. Pick one. Chu Bei looked at Dai Mubai with a smile. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Dai Mubai looked at the Star Luo Emperor again. After seeing the hint in the latter's eyes, he finally pointed at Oscar. He really could not bear to make a move on two girls who were only 5 or 6 years old. If he had to choose one, he could only choose Oscar, who was slightly older. Seeing that Dai Mubai chose Oscar, Chu Bei nodded his head in satisfaction. If Dai Mubai really chose Ning Rongrong or Xiao Wu as his opponent, he would really have to consider whether he should let Dai Mubai be a rank 1 representative. Come, I'll control my strength well. Dai Mubai stepped forward and waved at Oscar. Following that, 2 yellow soul rings lit up on his body. The second yellow soul ring already had some purple in it. After shouting, Dai Mubai's body was covered with a layer of tiger-shaped light armor. Looking at Dai Mubai, the Star Luo Emperor's mouth curled into a proud smile. When he looked at Chu Bei again, his eyes were filled with pride. His youngest son could be said to be the most talented person in the royal family in the past 1,000 years. At the age of 11, he was already a rank 26 soul grandmaster. Furthermore, his second soul ring was a 900-year soul ring. Boss, I'm going. After looking at Chu Bei, Oscar stepped forward and cupped his fists towards Dai Mubai. After that, the sausage martial soul appeared in his palm. Sausage? He can't be an auxiliary-type soul master, right? Then how is he going to fight Mubai? When the civil and military officials saw Oscar's martial soul, they all revealed looks of surprise and disdain. However, after a moment, when they saw the 3 soul rings on Oscar's body light up, their expressions changed. Little fellow, how old are you this year? Seeing the 3 soul rings on Oscar's body light up, the Star Luo Emperor was stunned and couldn't help but ask. Almost 8 years old. Hearing Oscar's words, the civil and military officials were even more shocked. Their mouths were wide open as they looked at each other. A soul elder who's not even 8 years old. He awakened his soul martial soul at the age of 6. His soul power has increased by more than 10 ranks in a year. How did he do it? At this moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Oscar as they discussed incessantly. Throughout the history of the Doloa continent, there were very few people with such cultivation talent. White Tiger's Shield! Just as everyone was still immersed in Oscar's realm of being a soul elder, Dai Mubai moved. After he shouted, his first soul ring lit up. The white tiger on the surface of his body was suffused with specks of golden light, as if it was wearing a layer of armor. White Tiger's Fierce Light Wave! As his second soul ring lit up, Dai Mubai jumped up and pounced towards Oscar like a ferocious tiger. Facing Dai Mubai, Oscar spread his legs apart, and lowered his center of gravity as he punched out. Gotcha! Although Oscar's fist didn't contain any soul skills, it easily penetrated Dai Mubai's white tiger shield. Following that, it collided with Dai Mubai's fist. In the next moment, following a dull thud, Dai Mubai's body flew out like a cannonball and smashed into the ground. Little Prince, are you all right? Seeing that Dai Mubai was sent flying, the civil and military officials immediately ran towards him frantically. I'm fine. Dai Mubai crawled up from the ground and quickly returned to the battlefield. After that, he attacked Oscar again. Bang! Something similar happened again. Oscar used a simple straight punch without any fancy moves. Not only did he block Dai Mubai's fierce light wave, he even sent him flying. Indeed, the difference in cultivation realms can't be made up for with just martial souls and soul skills. Dai Mubai returned to the battlefield once more. However, he didn't attack this time. Earlier, when he saw Oscar's 3 soul rings, he thought that his opponent was only an auxiliary-type soul master, and that he could use his martial soul and soul skills to defeat him. Who knew that he was too naive? Although he had the support of his soul skills, his strength was still far inferior to Oscar, who was already a soul elder. Father, I'm no match for him. Dai Mubai took a deep breath and lifted his head to look at the Star Luo Emperor. There was a look of indignation in his eyes. Don't be discouraged. The difference in your soul power is too great. It's normal for you to lose, the Star Luo Emperor said. Sir, I can let Mubai cultivate with you. However, you have to at least tell me who's behind you. This will make it easier for me to find him in the future. The Star Luo Emperor looked at Chu Bei. All Heaven's Shop. Chu Bei uttered 4 indifferent syllables. All Heaven's Shop? The Star Luo Emperor repeated. After that, he looked at the civil and military officials with a questioning look in his eyes. However, the civil and military officials all shook their heads. Evidently, they had never heard of this name. Can you tell me the location of this All Heaven's Shop? The Star Luo Emperor asked. It's not confirmed yet, Chu Bei replied. If you want to find your youngest son, you can go to the Heaven Do Empire's Fasno province, the Holy Soul Village. Heaven Do Empire? Everyone, including the Star Luo Emperor, was astonished. Chu Bei ignored the Star Luo Emperor and turned to look at Dai Mubai. He said plainly, If you want to become stronger, follow me. I only need 7 days, and I'll make you 1,000 times stronger than you are now. Dai Mubai hesitated when he met Chu Bei's gaze. He stuttered for a long time, as if he wanted to say something, but swallowed it back down. In the end, he raised his head and looked at the Star Luo Emperor. If you trust him, then go with him. The Star Luo Emperor nodded at Dai Mubai. I'll go with you. After a long while, Dai Mubai's gaze met Chu Bei's. His eyes were filled with a thirst for power. The Star Luo Emperor watched as Chu Bei's group boarded the Void Shuttle and left. He waved his hand at the civil and military officials behind him, indicating for them to leave. Third uncle, do you think I'm doing the right thing? The Star Luo Emperor looked in the direction Chu Bei's group left. He turned to the white-haired old man who had been severely injured by Chu Bei. Perhaps this is the best outcome for Mubai and Whis. The white-haired old man sighed. At least we don't have to watch the 2 brothers fight to the death for the throne. Perhaps Mubai's future will be better if he follows that person than if he stays in the palace. Third uncle, what do you think of his cultivation? The Star Luo Emperor asked again. Probably above rank 95. The white-haired old man narrowed his eyes and muttered. Host has successfully signed a contract with Dai Mubai. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress at 33%. Progress at 34%. Progress at 35%. After leaving the Star Luo Palace, Chu Bei quickly completed a set of procedures. After signing a contract with Dai Mubai, his cultivation conversion in the Dochi continent had increased from 32% to 41%. His cultivation in the Doluo continent had also become a rank 52 Soul King. What made Chu Bei rather pleased was that his appearance had finally recovered. He had returned to his handsome appearance before he transmigrated. Boss, these are? On the Void Shuttle, Dai Mubai was puzzled as he looked at the 5 items that he had spent 650,000 soul coins on. Among the 5 items, 4 of them were identical purple pills. There was also a ball of light with the projection of a white tiger. The purple pills cost 100,000 soul coins each. The ball of light cost 250,000 soul coins. Of course, these were all chosen by Chubei for Dai Mubai. He had clearly marked the prices for Dai Mubai to purchase. You'll know after you eat them. Chubei smiled as he looked at Dai Mubai. Hearing this, Dai Mubai threw the 4 purple pills into his mouth. The moment the pills entered his mouth, Dai Mubai's face was filled with shock. He could feel his soul power skyrocketing. Very quickly, the soul power in his body reached a bottleneck. Boss, could it be that my soul power has already reached rank 30? Dai Mubai looked at Chubei in disbelief after regaining his senses. It's not over yet. Chubei pointed at the floating ball of light and motioned for Dai Mubai to place his palm on it. After that, Dai Mubai followed Chubei's instructions. When he placed his palm on the ball of light, the projection of a white tiger flew out and slowly condensed into a purple soul ring in his palm. Almost at the same time, Dai Mubai's soul power skyrocketed again. This is a soul ring. Looking at the 3rd soul ring that lit up on his body, Dai Mubai's mouth was wide open and he fell into a trance. In just a short sapling, he went from a rank 26 soul Grandmaster to a rank 31 soul Elder. Before meeting Chubei, he had never thought that his soul power would rise by 4 ranks one day. Furthermore, he thought that he had to kill soul beasts to obtain soul rings. He had never thought that soul rings could be bought directly through money. Money is omnipotent. Seeing the excitement on Dai Mubai's face, Chubei nodded in satisfaction. Unlike Oscar, Dai Mubai had a solid background like Ning Rongrong, so he didn't need to find soul beasts to obtain soul rings. He could just spend money to obtain them. If it wasn't for the fact that there was a limit to how many agents could break through each day, he could make a few agents famous in the continent. Brother Oscar, why don't we spar again? Dai Mubai looked at Oscar with a restless expression. There's no need for that. Oscar rejected decisively. Chapter 194. The next day. At daybreak, Chubei woke up Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and the other 2. Then, he took out the tailor-made goods for them. For Ning Rongrong, he chose 9 Soul Master pills and a soul ring to break through to the Dodosher level. For Oscar, he chose 9 Soul Supreme pills and a soul ring to break through to the Soul Ancestor level. For Dai Mubai, he also chose 9 Soul Supreme pills and a soul ring to break through to the Soul Ancestor level. As for Xiao Wu, she still didn't want to use Chubei's goods. As the apple of the 7 treasures glazed Sex Sect Master's eye, coupled with Chen Xian and Gu Rong's spoiling, Ning Rongrong's little treasury was astonishing. First, she spent her share of money, and then she paid for Oscar. As for Dai Mubai, as the Star Luo Empire's little prince, he easily bought the goods prepared by Chubei. In less than 15 minutes, Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and Dai Mubai's cultivations all increased. Ning Rongrong jumped from a rank 11 Soul Master to a rank 21 Soul Grand Master. Oscar jumped from a rank 31 Soul Master to a rank 41 Soul Ancestor. Dai Mubai also went from a rank 31 Soul Master to a rank 41 Soul Ancestor. Rongrong, I will return the money I borrowed to you soon. Oscar looked at Ning Rongrong very seriously. I don't lack money. Ning Rongrong waved her hand, looking indifferent. Boss, now I realize that increasing soul power is so easy. Dai Mubai sighed. His expression was as if all the hardships he had suffered in the past were in vain. Xiao Wu, who was at the side, felt the 3 soaring auras. She bit her lip, wanting to say something, but stopped. Boss, where are we going today? Ning Rongrong asked curiously. Holy Soul Village. Chubei smiled. Holy Soul Village. On a mountain to the north of the village. Squeak, squeak. In the quiet forest, a wild rabbit was gnawing on a mushroom. Whoosh! But just as the wild rabbit was eating energetically, a figure quickly approached it, bringing with it a gust of wind. The sensitive wild rabbit immediately kicked its hind legs, ready to escape. However, he had barely leaped half a meter away when a huge suction force engulfed his entire body. In the next moment, under the suction force, the wild rabbit flew backward uncontrollably and landed in the hands of a boy. If one took a closer look, they would see that there was a black vortex in the center of the boy's palm. It was this vortex that was emitting a suction force that had sucked the wild rabbit into his hand. GG. As the devouring power in the vortex tore at it, the rabbit's eyes, which were originally filled with fear, began to turn white. Its body also began to shrivel up until it became a rabbit corpse with only skin and bones left. I seem to have reached a bottleneck. After devouring the wild rabbit's energy, the boy seemed to have sensed something and muttered to himself. This boy was Good-ner Wang Fan, who had fished Chu Bei out of the pond 3 days ago and obtained the golden horned beast's opportunity from Chu Bei. For 3 days, other than sleeping, he did the same thing all the time. The first was to absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. The second was to constantly search for snakes, wild rabbits, and wild boars in the mountains and forests to devour and absorb. Today, his soul power had reached the 10th rank. 1-1. Just as Wang Fan was about to take a short rest, a godly rainbow came from afar. After a short while, the godly rainbow arrived above his head. It was a huge object similar to a ship, with several figures standing on it. Among them, the young man at the front was looking down at him with a smile on his face. Meeting the young man's gaze, Wang Fan subconsciously stepped back, his eyes full of vigilance. Little guy, can you still recognize me? Chu Bei put away the space shuttle and landed in front of Wang Fan with Oscar and the others. You are? Wang Fan stepped back again, looking a little nervous. Is this golden horned beast martial soul still useful? Chu Bei continued. You are my grandfather? Wang Fan was stunned at first, then he asked tentatively in a low voice. Besides me, is there anyone else who knows that your martial soul is the golden horned beast? Chu Bei patted Wang Fan's shoulder. Grandfather, your appearance has changed so much. After getting the answer from Chu Bei's words, Wang Fan immediately exclaimed. His little face was full of excitement. You have cultivated well, your soul power is already at the 10th rank. Chu Bei nodded satisfactorily, then said to Wang Fan. Go find Tang San and spar with him. Let's do it next to the pond. Ah? Wang Fan was surprised. After the spar, regardless of whether you win or lose, I will give you another opportunity. Chu Bei guided him patiently. The opportunity he was talking about was naturally the first-level agency rights. I will work hard. Wang Fan responded, then quickly ran to the other side of the mountain. The 4 of you, go spread the news in the village. After Wang Fan left, Chu Bei glanced at Oscar, Dai Mubai, and the other 3. Okay. Oscar and the other 3 looked at each other, and then scattered in all directions, flying towards different directions of the village. 15 minutes later. Under Oscar, Dai Mubai, and the other 3's efforts to spread the news, several figures from the village gathered by the pond. Among these figures, most of them were children between the ages of 4 and 12. The rest were villagers who came from nearby farms to watch the show. Good-ner wants to spar with Xiao San. This is really interesting. Xiao San has been forging since he was young, and in my opinion, he is very talented. Among his peers in our village, there are very few people who can match him. If his martial soul awakens, it will definitely be a powerful attack-type martial soul. Yes, I also think that Xiao San is the most likely person in our village to become a soul master. But speaking of which, why did Good-ner want to spar with Xiao San? Didn't his martial soul awaken with a wooden stick last year? It's still 0 soul power. Children fighting for fun. It's quite ceremonial. I don't know where they found the 4 kids from the neighboring village to spread the news. Look! Good-ner is here. Amidst the noise and laughter, Wang Fan ran to the pond and came to Chu Bei. Did Tang San accept your invitation? Chu Bei asked Wang Fan. He said he'll be here in a while? Wang Fan nodded. At the same time, at the west side of the Holy Soul Village, at the entrance of the village. This was the second most simple house in the village after Wang Fan's house. In the middle of the big roof, there was a wooden sign with a diameter of about 1 meter. On the sign, there was a simple hammer, and on the right there were 3 big words, Blacksmith's Forge. Xiao San, why are you fiddling with the herbs? Are you hurt anywhere? A figure walked out of the house. When he saw Tang San's movements, he frowned. It was a middle-aged man who looked to be close to 50 years old. He was very tall and sturdy, but his dressing was not complimentary. His tattered robe didn't even have any patches on it, revealing patches of bronze skin. His originally regular facial features were covered with a layer of waxy yellow, and he looked sleepy. His hair was messy like a bird's nest, and his face was full of beard that had not been shaved for many days. His eyes were dull and yellow, and his body was full of the smell of alcohol. Goodener came to ask me for a fight, and I refused at first. However, he begged me again and again, and I had no choice but to agree. Tang San looked up at the middle-aged man who walked out of the house and continued. As for these herbs, I was afraid that I would hurt him, so I prepared them for him in advance, so that he can use them immediately. Goodener? Didn't he awaken last year? I remember that he didn't have any soul power. The middle-aged man shook his body. It was like that before, but 3 days ago, Goodener met an old man, and he seemed to have changed. Tang San replied. All right, be careful. Don't hit him too hard. The middle-aged man seemed to be too lazy to ask more, and waved his hand at Tang San. Tang San nodded at the middle-aged man, and packed up the herbs that he had successfully ground, and walked out of the house towards the pond. Look! Tang San is here. Hee, the show is about to start. Take a guess. Which of these 2 babies will cry first? Following Tang San's arrival, the pond, which had quieted down a little, became noisy again. Soon, Tang San walked into the open area that had been prepared as a place for the fight. Little San, come. Wang Fan stepped forward and clasped his fist at Tang San. Brother Gooden, let me see what changes you have made in the past 3 days. Tang San's figure moved, and he quickly ran towards Wang Fan. When he was 1 meter away, he threw a punch at Wang Fan's chest. Tang San is quite fast. Looking at Tang San who was attacking Wang Fan, the spectating children were shocked. The latter's speed was very fast. If it were them, they would not be able to avoid this punch, and would most likely be knocked down. The older villager was obviously shocked by Tang San's speed, and his eyes were filled with astonishment. But just as the crowd was worried for Wang Fan, and saw that Tang San's fist was about to hit Wang Fan's chest, Wang Fan's body suddenly leaned to the right, and then he took 2 steps back, stirring up a cloud of dust on the ground. In the end, he narrowly avoided Tang San's fist. Is it a coincidence? His fist missed. Tang San looked at Wang Fan and muttered to himself, and then his figure moved again. Because of his position, this time Tang San directly swept his hand from left to right towards Wang Fan. But just as Tang San's hand was about to hit Wang Fan's right arm, Wang Fan leaned to the side, causing Tang San's fingertips to sweep across the latter's chest, and missed again. Tang San frowned, and his speed increased again, throwing punch after punch at Wang Fan. However, in the face of such continuous attacks, Wang Fan was able to deal with them easily, and he was able to steadily avoid them every time. 3 minutes later, Tang San stopped his attack, and his face was filled with shock. He was very sure that Wang Fan was able to avoid it not because of a coincidence, but because Wang Fan's speed really caught up with his. Tang San aside, why is Goodener's speed so fast too? Why do I have a feeling that I can't even beat these 2 kids? The surrounding villagers looked at each other, and the shock on their faces was even more obvious. Chapter 195. Brother Gooden, you've really become stronger. But you'll have to be careful next. On the battlefield, Tang San's expression became serious, and the mysterious heaven technique began to operate within his body. As his voice faded, Tang San's figure moved once again. Compared to before, Tang San's speed was at least 3 times faster. Other than speed, his own strength seemed to have increased by a lot. Even the ground behind him began to be imprinted with long marks. Wang Fan seemed to have noticed Tang San's change. He waved his right hand, and a ball of beautiful light lit up in his palm. It was the phantom of a monster with a body similar to a lion. Its entire body was covered with black scales, and the cold light from the scales made people shiver. Other than that, it also had a pair of wings that seemed to be made of steel, and a strange black horn. The horn was wrapped with golden patterns that spread to its neck, back, and tail. At first glance, its body seemed to be covered in a layer of gold and black armor. The most astonishing thing was its pair of dark golden eyes. They were like the eyes of a god, and they faintly carried a might that looked down on the world. How is this possible? I remember Gooden's martial soul was a wooden stick. Why did it become a beast martial soul now? And what kind of soul beast is that? I've never seen it before. It looks so ferocious. Feel it carefully. Gooden's body clearly has soul power undulations, and it's far stronger than ours. Looking at the golden horned beast martial soul in Wang Fan's palm, the surrounding villagers' pupils shrank, and their faces changed, full of disbelief. Tang San's eyes were also filled with shock. On the battlefield, after Wang Fan revealed his martial soul, he did not dodge again. Instead, he clenched his fist and faced Tang San. Boom! In an instant, the two fists collided. A low muffled sound of collision rang out. Ta ta ta! The second after the collision, Tang San took a few steps back and almost fell to the ground. Damn! Is this still the Gooden from before? So strong! What happened to him? I don't care, I'll follow Brother Gooden from now on. A group of children looked at Wang Fan, who defeated Tang San, with admiration in their eyes. If one were to talk about the person with the greatest emotional fluctuation, it would be none other than Tang San, who was also on the battlefield. With the support of the mysterious heaven's skill, the strength of his previous punch was at least 200 pounds. Even if he was up against a 9th-rank spirit warrior from the village, he still wouldn't be able to withstand it. However, not only did Wang Fan receive such a punch, he even managed to push him back. Brother Gooden, I didn't expect you to be so strong. Tang San's gaze locked onto Wang Fan. Although I lost in terms of strength, I may not necessarily lose in this battle. From now on, you have to be even more careful. As soon as he finished speaking, Tang San's eyes were filled with battle intent. In the next moment, Tang San continuously lowered his head to pick up stones from the ground under the puzzled gazes of the surrounding villagers. What is he doing? Don't tell me he's going to use these stones to smash Wang Fan. You are too naive. That Wang Fan is already a 10th-rank soul warrior. His speed is enough to avoid these stones. Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and Dai Mubai spoke one after another. As for Chu Bei, he revealed an indecipherable smile. As someone who had an omniscient view, he naturally saw that Tang San was going to use the Tang School's hidden weapon technique. On the battlefield, Tang San quickly ran around Wang Fan as he increased the distance between him and Wang Fan. Xiao xiao xiao! As he ran, Tang San threw one stone after another, creating a whistling sound as they broke through the air. These stones were like marbles as they accurately shot towards Wang Fan. Due to Tang San's special technique, the stones he threw seemed to connect into a giant net with Wang Fan as the center, making it impossible for him to dodge. In a split second, Wang Fan fell into an extremely passive situation. Bang, bang, bang! Wang Fan's expression was solemn as he quickly hit the stones that were flying towards him. 1 stone, 2 stones, 3 stones. In just 3 seconds, 16 stones were successfully shot down by Wang Fan. Unfortunately, the stones were too tricky and their positions were too cleverly sealed. Even though Wang Fan's technique was fast enough, he was still hit in the back by one of the stones. He couldn't help but let out a cry of pain. Where did little San learn this stone-throwing technique from? It doesn't feel ordinary. With this technique, if he were to use it to hunt birds, he would make more money than Tang Hao, that drunkard, could make from blacksmithing. The surrounding villagers looked at Tang San on the battlefield and exclaimed in surprise. What a strange technique! Dai Mubai exclaimed and then looked at Chu Bei. Boss, this move of his should be derived from some kind of powerful soul skill. It has nothing to do with soul skills. This is a hidden weapon technique. Chu Bei not only did not lower his voice, but also deliberately let his voice float in the battlefield. Count carefully. There are a total of 27 stones, and they are the torrential pear blossom of the hidden weapon technique. Tang San used stones instead of hidden weapons. Although they have form but not spirit, they still have some power of the torrential pear blossom. With Wang Fan's strength, it will be difficult for him to completely block all 27 stones. On the battlefield, Tang San's body trembled when he heard Chu Bei's words. The gaze he used to look at Chu Bei was filled with a thick sense of wariness. Brother Gooden, you can admit defeat now. Tang San picked up 27 stones from the ground again and looked at Wang Fan. Again! Wang Fan waved at Tang San. Although he had not struck down all 27 stones, during this process he discovered that there was a kind of energy that was about to break out of his body. Brother Gooden, since that's the case, I will attack again. After saying that, a similar scene played out again. 27 stones flew out from Tang San's hands one after another. Bang, bang, bang. Wang Fan quickly hit the flying stones. When he hit the 16th stone, 17, 18, and 19 stones came at the same time. Looking at this scene, the villagers were sure that Wang Fan could only hit 2 stones with his hands and was about to be hit by the third one. Suddenly, a red soul ring lit up on Wang Fan's body. Almost at the same time when the red soul ring lit up, rolling black fog appeared in Wang Fan's palms. This black fog was like a black hole with endless suction. Chi. Not only the 3 stones that came at the same time, the remaining stones that were not blocked were also sucked in by the 2 black holes in an instant. That's a soul ring? How did Goodener suddenly become a soul master? Don't you have to kill a soul beast to get a soul ring? Why can his soul ring appear out of thin air? Doesn't he need to kill a soul beast? Also, aren't soul rings white? Why is his soul ring red? The villagers stared at the red soul ring that lit up on Wang Fan's body. While they were shocked, they were also a little confused. On the battlefield, Tang San was flabbergasted as well. His entire body seemed to have been struck by a bolt of lightning, and he seemed to have been struck by lightning. He was like a clay statue. This sudden change was too sudden and unexpected, and he was caught unprepared. A red soul ring! 100,000-year soul ring! Oh my God! The most shocked people in the battlefield were Ning Rongrong and Dai Mubai, who had great backgrounds. They did not dare to believe that there was someone who had 100,000-year soul ring. As far as they knew, this was simply impossible. Not to mention that to obtain 100,000-year soul ring, one had to kill 100,000-year soul beast with one's own hands. Even if this guy in front of them really had a heaven-defying opportunity and killed 100,000-year soul beast, with his physical fitness, it was impossible for him to successfully absorb 100,000-year soul ring. Not to mention a soul scholar, even a soul dolo who tried to absorb 100,000-year soul ring would most likely die from the shock of the soul ring. On the other hand, Xiao Wu immediately looked at Chu Bei with a questioning look in her eyes. She seemed to be asking if Wang Fan was like her, 100,000-year soul beast that had transformed into a human form. Little San, it's my turn now. Wang Fan looked at Tang San. Hearing Wang Fan's words, Tang San recovered from his shock. His whole body was as tense as a rock, and his heart was as heavy as lead. But before he could make a move, Wang Fan had already appeared in front of him and slapped him with his palm. Tang San did not hesitate, and quickly punched out to meet the attack. Bang! However, this time, Tang San felt that the power he had gathered on his fist had completely disappeared the moment it touched his opponent's palm. Then, with a palm strike, The other party first knocked away his weak fist, then pressed it against his chest. With a deep sound, Tang San was sent flying and crashed to the ground not far away. Little San, in the end you still lost. In the end, Wang Fan's palm that was pressed against Tang San's chest had obviously restrained more than half of his power. Tang San got up from the ground, brushed the dust off his body, and stood up to walk in front of Wang Fan. Brother Gooden, you are indeed stronger than me. I admit defeat wholeheartedly. Little San, aren't you curious? In just 3 days, how did I become so strong? Wang Fan looked at Tang San, and his voice floated in the air. At this moment, not only Tang San, but all the villagers and children by the pond rushed forward and pricked up their ears, waiting for Wang Fan's next words. All of this is actually an opportunity bestowed to me by grandfather. Wang Fan's gaze swept across the crowd as he spoke. Grandfather? Are you talking about the old man you saved from the water 3 days ago? Could it be that he's a hidden expert? Oh my God! We didn't even recognize him. Hearing Wang Fan's words, the villagers seemed to have thought of something. They looked at each other, their faces filled with regret. That old man? Tang San naturally knew who Wang Fan's grandfather was. On the morning 3 days ago, he had personally met the other party. However, because the old man was too strange, and even knew about his past life, Tang San did not dare to have too much contact with him. In other words, in front of the old man, he chose to retreat in order to advance. Where is the old man now? Is he still in the village? After a long while, Tang San could not help but ask. Wang Fan nodded, then stretched out his hand and pointed at Chu Bei. Swish! Looking in the direction Wang Fan's right hand was pointing at, everyone's eyes were focused on Chu Bei. Chapter 196. Goodener, he's the old man you saved from the water 3 days ago. The villagers' gazes landed on Chu Bei, their faces full of shock and disbelief. They were unable to connect the youth in front of them with the old man who looked like he was about to enter the ground 3 days ago. Tang San also stared blankly at Chu Bei. No wonder he was able to identify his torrential pear blossom hidden weapon technique. Host activates Level 2 Agency Authority. Limit, 100 people. The signatory will receive a Rank 12 Soul Gift Pack. The signatory's cultivation is above Rank 12. The Soul Gift Pack will be converted into a Soul Master Pill. The signatory's cultivation is below Rank 12. His soul power will rise to Rank 12, and he will receive a 100-year Soul Ring from the Gift Pack. At this moment, a series of system notifications rang out. Chu Bei was stunned, and information about the Level 2 agency flowed into his mind. After sorting out the information about the Level 2 agency, Chu Bei's gaze swept across the villagers, and he had a new idea. At this moment, the villagers who sensed Chu Bei's gaze came forward one after another, trying to greet Chu Bei. After a short while, Chu Bei was surrounded by people. Everyone, let's disperse for today. At this time tomorrow, each household will send a representative to gather here. I will give them an opportunity. Looking at the enthusiastic villagers around him, Chu Bei smiled. Opportunity? Thank you, sir. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the villagers looked at each other, their faces full of joy and excitement. Obviously, in their eyes, this so-called opportunity was related to becoming a soul master. After all, Goodener's achievements were all because of this person. After that, the villagers greeted Chu Bei with incomparable politeness, excitedly discussing as they left together. Tang San, do you still want to run this time? Do you want to consider being my Level 1 agency and help me build a business empire on this continent? Chu Bei walked in front of Tang San with a smile on his face. Why did you choose me? Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Tang San was still vigilant. I only choose the fated ones. Chu Bei smiled and pointed at Oscar, Dai Mubai, and the other two behind him. Not only you, they were also chosen by me. After that, Chu Bei looked at Wang Fan. And you? Thank you, Grandpa. Unlike Chu Bei, Wang Fan was thrilled when he learned that Chu Bei had chosen him. Little Fan, call me boss from now on. Chu Bei found it hard to get used to being called Grandpa. Thank you, boss, Wang Fan corrected himself. Looking at Wang Fan, who was shouting wildly beside him, Tang San fell silent and hesitated. Noticing that Tang San was already tempted, Chu Bei waved his sleeve and an ancient and heavy book floated in front of Tang San. All Heaven's Concealed Weapons Manual? Looking at the eye-catching words on the cover of the book, Tang San stretched out his hand out of curiosity. However, after flipping through a few pages of the Concealed Weapons Manual, Tang San's expression froze. In fact, the astonishment in his eyes was even greater than when he saw Wang Fan's martial spirit earlier. This was a Concealed Weapons Manual, which had a detailed description of the production of each concealed weapon. However, after flipping through 2 pages, Tang San saw the names that he couldn't be more familiar with in his previous life. Peacock Plume, Yama's Invitation, Torrential Pear Blossom Needles, Bodhi Blood, Guanin's Tears, Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus. These Tang Sect's top concealed weapons could actually be found in this Concealed Weapons Manual. Moreover, they seemed to have been strengthened. Some of the original flaws had been fixed. It was simply perfect. In addition, there were some supreme concealed weapons that he had never heard of before that were ranked above these concealed weapons. After a long time, Tang San carefully closed the Concealed Weapons Manual and took a deep breath. Then, he looked straight at Chu Bei with a serious expression. I know what you're thinking now. You just want to build a new Tang sect. Chu Bei saw through Tang San with a single glance. The corners of his mouth curled into a smile. However, this hidden weapon manual is not enough. You still need to have sufficient strength. Coincidentally, I can give you strength. However, the prerequisite is that you have to become my first-level agent. I'm willing to be your first-level agent. Just as Chu Bei finished speaking, Tang San opened his mouth and said each word clearly. At the same time, he held the Concealed Weapons Manual with both hands. With this Concealed Weapons Manual, he was confident that he could create a Tang sect that would far surpass his previous life. You've made the right choice. Chu Bei patted Tang San's shoulder with gratification. After saying that, he pointed at Tang San's forehead and poured the information about the first-level agent into his mind. After a few seconds, Tang San put on the agent ring. Host has successfully signed a contract with the first-level agent, Tang San. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress 42%. Progress 43%. Progress 44%. The moment Tang San dripped his blood on the ring, the system sound rang. Perhaps it was because he was the main character, but compared to signing a contract with Dai Mubai and the others, signing a contract with Tang San's cultivation conversion was much faster. It directly went from 41% to 56%. As for his soul power, it also jumped from a level 52 Soul King to a level 68 Soul Emperor. Boss, we're just blacksmiths. We don't have much money. After understanding the benefits of a first-level agent, Tang San raised his eyes and looked at Chu Bei with an awkward expression. Little San, I'll pay for the money you need to spend in the early stages. Dai Mubai walked forward and patted Tang San's shoulder generously. Then give him 50,000 soul coins first. After looking at Dai Mubai, Chu Bei waved his hand and a red pill appeared in front of Tang San. This is? When Tang San received the soul coin that Dai Mubai had given him, the red pill automatically fell into his palm as soon as he spent it. As long as you eat this pill, you can immediately awaken your martial soul. You don't need to wait until you're 6 years old. Ning Rongrong recognized the red pill at a glance. She had awakened after eating this red pill. After hearing that, Tang San looked at Ning Rongrong and carefully threw the red pill into his mouth. After the red pill entered his mouth, Tang San seemed to feel something strange in his body and subconsciously raised his right hand. Specks of blue light converged on his palm, and at the same time, soul power undulations surfaced from Tang San's body. 10. Rank 10. No wonder boss didn't give you that blue pill. So you have innate full soul power. Sensing Tang San's soul power fluctuations, Dai Mubai and Ning Rongrong cried out in surprise. Xiao Wu and Oscar's expressions changed as well. In the next moment, Dai Mubai, Ning Rongrong and the other two locked their gazes on Tang San's palm with anticipation. Obviously, they were very curious about Tang San's martial soul with innate full soul power. Gradually, more and more blue light spots appeared on Tang San's palm until they evolved into a light blue grass. This is blue silver grass? How can this be? He obviously has innate full soul power. Why is his martial soul blue silver grass? There must be something wrong somewhere. He's the person chosen by boss. He shouldn't have such a trash martial soul. When they saw the grass martial soul condensed in Tang San's right palm, Ning Rongrong, Dai Mubai, Oscar and Xiao Wu looked at each other in dismay. Blue silver grass could be seen everywhere. It had no offensive or defensive power, and could be said to be the most useless martial soul. They couldn't believe that the person chosen by boss with innate full soul power would have blue silver grass as his martial soul. Hearing the voices of Dai Mubai and the others, Tang San looked at the blue silver grass martial soul in his right palm. He clenched his left hand and was about to raise it, but then he put it down again. Boss, I want to ask, can a person only have one martial soul? Tang San suddenly asked with his left hand behind his back and raised his head to look at Chu Bei. Of course. Have you seen anyone with a second martial soul? You only have one chance. Although you have innate full soul power, your martial soul is blue silver grass. Your future path will be very difficult. Without waiting for Chu Bei to speak, Ning Rongrong took the initiative to speak to Tang San. Got it. Tang San looked at Ning Rongrong and didn't say anything else. Rongrong, on what basis are you so sure that a person can have two martial souls at the same time? Chu Bei's gaze fell on Ning Rongrong as he asked indifferently. My father told me. Moreover, in our sect, I've never heard of anyone with two martial souls. Ning Rongrong raised her head and replied to Chu Bei. Although there are few cases of twin martial souls, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. In the past 100 years, the Martial Spirit Palace has produced a person with twin martial souls. Today, this person is standing at the peak of the continent. Chu Bei's voice was calm. Boss, from what you're saying, could it be that Tang San, he has twin martial souls? Oscar and Dai Mubai reacted and guessed. Little San, extend your left hand and show it to them. Chu Bei's gaze returned to Tang San. Tang San hesitated for a moment and softly replied. Then, Tang San slowly raised his left hand like he did with his right hand. This time, there was no longer a blue light in the center of his palm. A faint black light condensed and took shape, and a strange object appeared in his palm. This was a completely black hammer. The handle of the hammer was about half a foot long, and the head of the hammer was cylindrical. It looked like a miniature casting hammer. However, on the surface of the hammer, there was a special light. On the cylindrical head of the hammer, there was a faint pattern. When this hammer appeared in Tang San's left palm, the surrounding air seemed to become somewhat oppressive. As for Tang San, his legs were in a horse stance. It seemed that he used a lot of strength to lift this completely black hammer. There really is a second martial soul. And it's a tool martial soul, a hammer. But this hammer looks very strange. Seeing the second martial soul light up in Tang San's left palm, Ning Rongrong, Oscar, Dai Mubai, and Xiao Wu's faces were filled with astonishment. Boss, have you seen this hammer before? Does it have a name? Tang San pointed at the faint pattern on the head of the hammer and asked curiously. You'll know in the future. Chu Bei purposely left some suspense. After saying that, Chu Bei's gaze swept across Dai Mubai, Ning Rongrong, and Oscar and said, Remember, there is no such thing as a trash martial soul in this world. Even if it's just blue silver grass, if used properly, it can become a terrifying killing weapon. Thank you for your guidance, boss. Dai Mubai, Oscar, and Ning Rongrong's expressions were serious as they nodded at the same time. You guys go play too. Chu Bei waved Dai Mubai and the others away. 2 hours later, Tang San returned to the blacksmith's forge. You won? Tang San had just entered the house when a middle-aged man, who was smelling of alcohol, glanced at Tang San and lazily asked, "I lost." Tang San replied, "You lost to Gooden?" The middle-aged man put down the hammer in his hand, and a trace of astonishment appeared in his eyes. Although his son had not awakened his martial soul, he had been smithing with him since he was young. Furthermore, his physique was naturally better than ordinary people. In his opinion, his son could even fight against an adult man. Because of this, the other party lost to Gooden, which was why he was so puzzled. Gooden broke through. He became a spirit master. Tang San continued. The middle-aged man's face was even more shocked. How did his soul ring come about? Dad, my martial soul awakened. Tang San said the main point. Awakening is awakening. I'm asking you about Gooden's martial soul. What? Your martial soul awakened. As the middle-aged man spoke, his pupils suddenly constricted. You're not even 6 years old yet. How did your martial soul awaken? Tang San was not in a hurry to answer the middle-aged man's question. Instead, he spread out his hands at the same time. A blue dot converged on his right hand, and a black light surged on his left hand. In a moment, the blue-silver grass in his right hand and the clear sky hammer in his left. 2 martial souls were formed. Could it be that it was fated? Blue-silver grass is the same as hers. Tang Hao stared blankly at the 2 martial souls that Tang San had summoned. He was absent-minded for a moment, and no one knew what he was muttering. Dad, what's wrong? Looking at the absent-minded Tang Hao, Tang San hurriedly opened his mouth to ask. There was some worry in his eyes. Ever since he was born, he had never seen his father's expression so wonderful. All kinds of complicated emotions constantly intertwined and changed. Tell me, why was your martial soul awakened? Suddenly, Tang Hao seemed to have thought of something. His 2 eyes stared straight at Tang San, his gaze carrying a questioning look. Meeting Tang Hao's gaze, Tang San inexplicably felt a little absent-minded. In that instant, he felt as if his father had changed into a different person. Especially that dispirited feeling that he gave others, it was completely gone. Tang San organized his thoughts and recounted the details of what had happened to Chu Bei. Of course, he still chose to hide the matter regarding the Tang sect in his previous life. Who would have thought that such an existence would actually come to the Holy Spirit village? After hearing Tang San's words, the middle-aged man looked outside the door, squinted his eyes and muttered to himself. Dad, what did you just say? I didn't hear it clearly. Tang San said. Go back to your room. The middle-aged man waved his hand at Tang San, turned around and walked into his room. Night fell. The moon was dark and the wind was strong. A black shadow flew out from the blacksmith's forge. The middle-aged man was still wearing his tattered robes, but his originally dull and dim eyes had become clear. Compared to the day, the middle-aged man's entire aura had changed. In just a few seconds, the middle-aged man had already arrived at the location of Wang Fan's house. Who are you? The middle-aged man leaned against the wall. A vigorous and powerful voice penetrated the wall. Tang Hao, how have you been hiding here all these years? Following the light and airy voice, Chu Bei's figure appeared in front of the middle-aged man. Chapter 197. You're from the Martial Spirit Hall? When he heard Chu Bei say his name, Tang Hao's body trembled slightly. Following which, his expression turned gloomy, and a terrifying aura shot out from his body. Even though Tang Hao was deliberately suppressing it, this aura still shook the void and tore open pitch-black gaps in space. Tang Hao, the most outstanding prodigy of the Clear Sky sect. Together with your brother, Tang Xiao, they are known as the Clear Sky Twin Stars. They are even designated as the next sect leader of the Clear Sky sect. When you were out training, you met 100,000-year soul beast, the Blue-Silver Emperor, which had taken the form of a woman. After some time, you fell in love with her, and not long after, you married her. However, you were pursued by the martial spirit hall on your way back to the sect. In order to protect you, that woman took her own life and sacrificed it to you. After that battle, you broke through to rank 90 and became the youngest titled Doloa. With 100,000-year soul beast, you killed 2 titled Doloa from the martial spirit hall. You even severely injured the martial spirit hall's pope, Qian Xuanga, and caused his death. After the battle with the martial spirit hall, you brought the newborn Tang San to the Holy Soul village to avoid being pursued by them. You became a blacksmith who drank inferior ale every day. Chu Bei did not seem to care about Tang Hao's aura that was getting stronger and stronger. He continued to talk about his past leisurely. Speak! Who are you? After he finished speaking, Tang Hao took a step forward. A pitch-black hammer appeared in his right hand. He raised the hammer and smashed it towards Chu Bei. Unlike Tang San's clear sky hammer, Tang Hao's clear sky hammer was wrapped in a layer of reddish-black light. Black-purple lightning intersected within the light. The moment it was summoned, the surrounding void collapsed. Everywhere it passed, there were fragments of void space. Looking at the clear sky hammer that was smashing towards him with a terrifying aura, Chu Bei was still very calm. He gently lifted his right palm. Just as the clear sky hammer was about to hit Chu Bei's right palm, a faint light screen lit up in front of his palm. Buzz buzz, the clear sky hammer smashed against the light screen. However, this attack did not produce the earth-shattering explosion that he had expected, nor did it produce any terrifying energy ripples. There was only the buzzing of mosquitoes. Looking over, he saw that under this faint layer of light, the red and black ball of light that wrapped around the clear sky hammer was rapidly disappearing. The destructive energy that was contained within the ball of light dissipated from the light screen. Tang Hao frowned and looked at the screen of light in front of Chu Bei's palm. With a low shout, he raised the clear sky hammer and smashed down again. Compared to the previous hammer, the power of this hammer was even more terrifying. The void where the giant hammer passed directly collapsed and caved in. However, the outcome did not change. A similar scene played out again. Before the terrifying energy on the clear sky hammer could reach Chu Bei, it was absorbed by the light screen in front of his palm. Who the hell are you? After the 2 close-range attacks were mysteriously neutralized, Tang Hao immediately pulled away from Chu Bei. When he looked at the latter again, his gaze was filled with vigilance. Why are you so nervous? If I were a member of the Martial Spirit Palace, do you think I would stand here and chat with you in the middle of the night? Chu Bei looked at Tang Hao calmly and said with a smile, I wonder why you are looking for me. After knowing that Chu Bei was not a member of the Martial Spirit Palace, Tang Hao put away the clear sky hammer. Although the killing intent in his eyes disappeared, the confusion on his face became even more intense. How did it become me looking for you? It was clearly you who came in the middle of the night and woke me up from my sleep. Chu Bei pointed at the house behind him and looked at Tang Hao with a playful expression. Tang Hao's eyes flashed with ridicule and embarrassment. He changed his words and said, I wonder why you chose Xiao San. He is still a child who is not even 6 years old. I chose him because I divined that he is fated with me. As for his age, it is not within my consideration. Chu Bei replied. Since you already know my identity, I wonder if you should tell me your background? Tang Hao's eyes narrowed as he sized up Chu Bei again. What surprised him was that with his cultivation, he was actually unable to detect the other party's soul power fluctuation, let alone see the other party's specific cultivation. I'm a merchant who doesn't belong to this continent. Chu Bei looked up at the starry sky at a 45-degree angle, as if looking in the direction he came from, and said, But since I'm here, then I have to create a business empire that belongs to me on this continent. Not belonging to the Doloa continent. Where is that? Tang Hao asked with a puzzled expression. You'll know when you reach level 100 and become a god. Chu Bei replied indifferently. Level 100? Tang Hao's frown deepened, and he said, Sir, I wonder if you can spar with me again? With that, Tang Hao soared into the air and floated 100 meters in the air. His aura completely erupted. Under the energy aura that Tang Hao released, the surrounding space rumbled, and large spatial cracks spread far and wide. It's late at night. It's better to wash up and sleep. Just as Tang Hao held the clear sky hammer and stared coldly at Chu Bei, about to fight with him, a casual voice came out from the other party's mouth. Following that, the other party twisted his neck, turned around, and walked towards the dilapidated house. Looking at Chu Bei's back, Tang Hao frowned. However, just as he was about to force the other party to fight with him, a dazzling light appeared out of thin air in front of him. In an instant, the dazzling light transformed into a huge energy palm, piercing through the void and grabbing towards him. Sensing the strange aura fluctuations on the energy palm, Tang Hao's pupils suddenly constricted. He hurriedly held the clear sky hammer with both hands and attacked. Bang! Perhaps because of the great disparity in strength, the clear sky hammer that Tang Hao swung out was repelled by the giant palm. Not only that, when the energy palm was 10 meters away from him, he suddenly realized that the space around him seemed to have been frozen. Even if he wanted to swing the clear sky hammer again, it would be extremely difficult. The energy palm arrived in the blink of an eye. However, the energy palm did not directly slap down. Instead, it suddenly bent and held Tang Hao in its palm, firmly binding him. It was only when Chu Bei walked into the house and closed the door that the energy palm released and dissipated in the pitch-black sky. Looking at the dissipating energy palm, and then looking at the dilapidated house that no one was outside, Tang Hao put away the clear sky hammer and let out a long breath. Although the other party did not agree to spar with him, he had already glimpsed a corner of the other party's strength through the energy palm just now. At least, the other party's strength was far above his. If not for the fact that the energy of the palm had not been restrained, perhaps he would have already died under that palm just now. Could it be that what he said just now was true? Is there a wider world outside of the continent? Tang Hao muttered to himself. After looking at the dilapidated house below again, he turned around and flew in the direction he came from. Father, where did you go so late at night? When Tang Hao returned to the blacksmith's forge, Tang San was sitting at the table with an anxious and worried expression. Seeing that Tang Hao had returned, Tang San hurriedly went forward to ask. Little San, since you've already awakened your martial soul, then work hard to stand at the peak of this continent. If you encounter any difficulties, don't shoulder them by yourself. You can find that boss of yours, he has the ability to help you solve them. Tang Hao placed his 2 hands on Tang San's shoulders and said earnestly, In your future you must use the hammer in your left hand to protect the grass in your right hand. Father, what are you talking about? Hearing Tang Hao's inexplicable words, Tang San's expression was that of a monk scratching his head in confusion. Tang Hao did not continue speaking. He turned around and walked into the house. The next day, at dawn, Tang San crawled out of his bed. But when he was about to wake Tang Hao up, he found that the door of the other party's room, which was usually closed at this time, was wide open. Tang San quickly walked into Tang Hao's room. There was no one in the room, but there was a piece of paper with 2 lines of words written on it on the bed. San-er, you already have your own path. It's time for me to go and do some things that I have not finished before. When I leave this time, I will not ask when I will return. Do not miss me. After reading the 2 lines of words on the paper, Tang San hurriedly ran out of the room. As he shouted, he looked around, but there was no trace of Tang Hao. After a fruitless search, Tang San looked at the time and could only walk to the side of the pond. Looking around, the pond was already surrounded by villagers. There were women, old people, and children. Even the old village elder had rushed over. At this moment, the gazes of all the villagers were fixed on the same person. While they were fiercely discussing, their faces were filled with anticipation. Boss, Little San is here. Good and Wang Fan tugged at the corner of Chu Bei's clothes and pointed at Tang San, who was walking over. He had already left before dawn. Chu Bei looked at Tang San, his calm voice drifting through the air. Boss, you've seen my father? Tang San opened his eyes wide. Chu Bei nodded slightly and replied softly. Before Tang Hao left, he had stopped in the air above his house and used his spiritual sense to ask him to take good care of Tang San. Where did my father go? Tang San seemed to have guessed the purpose of Tang Hao looking for Chu Bei and asked another question. When you're strong enough, I'll naturally tell you. After saying that, Chu Bei's gaze moved away from Tang San and swept across the enthusiastic villagers. Everyone, do you still remember what I told you yesterday? Every household will send a representative, and I'll give them an opportunity. Chu Bei's vigorous voice lingered in everyone's ears. If you already have a representative, you can take a step forward. In the Holy Spirit Village, other than Wang Fan's family and Xiaoyan's family, there were a total of 90 households. And the system's upper limit for second-level representatives was 100. It was because of this that Chu Bei asked each household to send a representative. Sir, hello, I'm Li Dong. The first household sent a 7-year-old boy as a representative. Perhaps because of his parents' teachings, when the boy walked in front of Chu Bei, he directly bowed 90 degrees, then looked at Chu Bei very sensibly. Sir, I've already awakened last year. Although my martial spirit is a dagger, I have no soul power. Seeing that Chu Bei was beginning to size him up, the little boy was clearly nervous. His fists were tightly clenched as he explained his situation and summoned his dagger martial spirit. Chapter 198. Put it on and drip a drop of blood on it. Chu Bei looked at the little boy called Li Dong and waved his right hand. A golden ring floated in front of the little boy. Unlike the ring of the first agent, the second agent was a ring. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the little boy carefully took the ring. After putting it on his wrist, he bit his index finger. When the little boy dripped his blood on the ring, which was 2 or 3 times bigger than his wrist, suddenly shrank until it fit the little boy's wrist perfectly, as if it was tailor-made. The host has successfully signed the second agent contract. Level 12 Soul Power Gift Pack has been issued. At the same time, a gorgeous square box appeared in front of the little boy. The square box exploded. Inside were 11 pills and a yellow halo of light. According to Chu Bei's instructions, the little boy first swallowed 10 pills, then reached his right hand into the yellow halo and finally swallowed another pill. Do you feel it? Soul power! Little Dong has soul power! His soul power fluctuations are increasing rapidly. Look! A soul ring has appeared. It's yellow, and it's a 100-year soul ring. Heavens! Doesn't this mean that Little Dong has stepped into the ranks of soul masters? That's great! Haha, my son is a soul master. He doesn't have to farm like us for the rest of his life. Witnessing the little boy's transformation and feeling his soul power fluctuations, the villagers were extremely excited. Especially the little boy's parents. With a plop, they knelt in front of Chu Bei with tears of gratitude and kowtowed repeatedly to express their gratitude. Next, after Chu Bei supported the little boy's parents, he swept his gaze across the other villagers. The second family sent an 8-year-old girl as their representative. Compared to the boy from before, this girl was slightly better, but she only had a soul power of the second rank. After a set of procedures, the little girl's soul power reached the 12th rank, and she also had a 100-year soul ring. Sir, it's our turn now! We're next! As time passed, amidst the excited voices, one family after another sent out their representatives. No matter which family it was, the representatives they sent out all had a common characteristic, and that was to send out children first. If there were no children in the family, the youngest person would be chosen. An hour later, Chu Bei let out a long sigh. Finally, the representatives of the 90 families had all signed the agreement. What made Chu Bei feel gratified was that after signing these 90 second-rank agents, his cultivation conversion rate in the Do Chi continent actually increased by 3 points, from 56% to 59%. As for his soul power, he had changed from a rank 68 Soul Emperor to a rank 71 Soul Sage. Although the increase wasn't much, Chu Bei was still very happy with the principle that no matter how small an ant was, it was still meat. Those who received the soul power gift pack earlier, gather around. Chu Bei took a few steps back and signaled the surrounding villagers to make way for him. Not long after Chu Bei spoke, 90 second-class agents gathered in the open area. At a glance, at least 80% of the 90 people were below the age of 20. You guys should go over as well. Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Dai Mubai, Oscar, and the others nodded and walked to the front of the 90 people. Little guys, you already know that I'm going to create a business empire that everyone on the continent knows about. And you, as my first and second-class agents, will enjoy enviable privileges. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that you'll all work hard to sell your goods and earn more money. However, I need you to advertise the All Heavens shop. As for the location of the All Heavens shop's headquarters, it hasn't been decided yet. Once I find the most suitable location, I'll inform you immediately. Cherish the last time you have together. From the day after tomorrow, go to the vast world alone or with your family. Chu Bei's gaze swept across the group of agents, his loud voice drifting through the field. If you encounter any danger, use the void sound transmission stone to call me. I'll be there immediately to ensure your safety. At the end of his speech, Chu Bei waved his hand and a total of 96 sparkling and translucent jade stones fell into the hands of the 96 people in the field. As an agent, the number of treasure boxes sold each day was determined by the agent's cultivation. However, due to the different agents' rank, the number of treasure boxes sold each day was also different. When a certain number of treasure boxes were sold, the agent's ring or golden hoop would give the agent a clearly marked product. As for the actual price of the product, it was up to the agent himself. Any excess price would belong to the agent. The most direct advantage of being a shop agent was that no matter where they were, they could buy goods from Chu Bei from afar at an extremely low price. Compared to Chu Bei, who could specify the series of boxes, the boxes sold by the agents were random. For example, Dai Mubai and Oscar were currently level 41 soul ancestors. As first-class agents, they could sell boxes of level 5 and below. Every time they sold a square box, they would get a small commission from it. Then, they would buy the treasures they needed from Chu Bei. Boss, we'll definitely do our best. Thank you for giving us such an opportunity. The group of agents held the void sound transmission stone in their hands tightly, and waved at Chu Bei excitedly. This void sound transmission stone was the guarantee that they dared to go out and sell treasure boxes. Everyone, you're all leaving the village. Let's have a good party today and tomorrow. Don't be too sad. With this void sound transmission stone, everyone can contact each other at any time. Haha, let's follow in the boss's footsteps and stand at the top of the continent. Amidst the excited voices, the second-class agents and villagers began to run back to their houses and took out the normal good wine and food. In less than an hour, the originally quiet Holy Soul village became a palace of revelry. Boss, can we still spend money today? Dai Mubai looked at Chu Bei expectantly. Anytime if you have money, Chu Bei replied. That's great. Dai Mubai and Ning Rongrong shouted excitedly. Next, Dai Mubai and Ning Rongrong started their journey of spending money. Oscar was still booked by Ning Rongrong, while Tang San and Wang Fan were booked by Dai Mubai. Half an hour later, Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and Dai Mubai's cultivation increased. Ning Rongrong jumped from a rank 21 Soul Grand Master to a rank 31 Soul Elder. Oscar jumped from a rank 41 Soul Ancestor to a rank 51 Soul King. Dai Mubai also jumped from a rank 41 Soul Ancestor to a rank 51 Soul King. Tang San jumped from a rank 11 Soul Master to a rank 21 Soul Grand Master. Wang Fan also jumped from a rank 11 Soul Master to a rank 21 Soul Grand Master. Boss, I want to spend money too. Looking at the people who were getting stronger and stronger, Xiao Wu finally couldn't hold back anymore. Boss, I'll take care of Sister Xiao Wu's money. Ning Rongrong raised her head and was very heroic. Due to Xiao Wu's special circumstances, Chu Bei didn't need to prepare a soul ring for her and directly gave her 10 pills to increase her soul power. After a while, Xiaowu jumped from a rank 11 Soul Master to a rank 21 Soul Grand Master, the same as Tang San and Wang Fan. The next day, on a straight mountain path not far from the Holy Soul Village, there were two figures, one in front and one behind. Looking at their path, it was clear that they were heading towards the Holy Soul Village. The one in front was a youth wearing a gorgeous white robe, and the one behind him was a youth wearing a simple black robe. The latter was the former's follower. Upon closer inspection, the white-robed youth had sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. In the center of his chest, there was a conspicuous soul character the size of a fist. Below the soul character, there was a long sword insignia with 3 intersecting swords on the insignia. The number of swords meant that the other party was a soul warrior, and the number of swords meant that the other party had the third title, a rank 30 Soul Grand Master. Lord Deacon, how many good seedlings do you think the Holy Soul Village will have this time? The black-robed man respectfully followed behind the white-robed youth. How can such a small place have any good seedlings? I've been here for so many years, but I haven't even seen a rank 7 Soul Master, let alone an innate full Soul Master. The white-robed youth's name was Su Yuntao, and he was the deacon of the Martial Soul Branch Hall closest to the Holy Soul Village. Whether it was the Heaven Do Empire or the Star Luo Empire, there was a Martial Soul Branch Hall in every city on the Doluo continent. There were 5 levels to the Martial Soul Branch Hall, and different cities had different levels. Smaller cities had Martial Soul Branch Halls. Above the branch halls was the Martial Soul Branch Hall, and above that was the Martial Soul Main Hall. Above that was the Martial Soul Temple, which only existed in the capitals of the 2 empires. Above the Martial Soul Temple was the Pope's Palace, which was the most revered place in the Martial Soul Temple. Normally, only Doluo were qualified to enter the Pope's Palace. Su Yuntao came here to help the children who had reached the age of 6 in the Holy Soul Village to carry out the awakening ceremony. Of course, if he could find 1 or 2 good seedlings, he would take them away in the name of the Soul Branch Hall. Su Yuntao and the black-robed man were getting closer and closer to the Holy Soul Village. Is there some good news in this village? It's so lively! When they were a few hundred meters away from the entrance of the Holy Soul Village, the black-robed man, who was the follower, heard the commotion coming from the village. He could faintly hear joyful shouts from the crowd. Su Yuntao frowned and continued forward. Perhaps it was because the village was too lively, but even though Su Yuntao had already arrived at the entrance of the village, no one noticed his arrival. Cough, cough! Su Yuntao had no choice but to pretend to cough loudly. Finally, a few villagers who were closer to the village noticed Su Yuntao's arrival. Look! Deacon Su from the Martial Soul Temple is here! Why did he come early this year? Haha, but we don't need him this time. More and more villagers looked at Su Yuntao, and they spoke one after another. Looking at the indifferent villagers, Su Yuntao's brows furrowed. In the past, all the villagers who had 6-year-old children would come forward to welcome him as soon as they saw him. However, no one came forward this year. Chapter 199. Lord Deacon, why did you come early this year? The old village chief quickly stepped forward and greeted Su Yuntao politely. You guys are very lively today. Did something good happen in the village? No one came to greet me even though I'm here. Su Yuntao glanced at the old village chief with displeasure. I hope Lord Deacon doesn't take offense. The old village chief apologized again and again. Forget it. Bring all the children who are 6 years old here and let me take a look. Su Yuntao waved his hand at the old village chief, no longer pursuing the matter. Lord, if you're here to awaken those children, I don't think it's necessary. The old village chief looked at the group of children playing by the pond and couldn't help but say, What do you mean? Su Yuntao frowned. Don't tell me you want to ruin their future? What if there's really a good seedling among them? You're not a competent village chief if you delay them like this. Lord, you've misunderstood. What I mean is that these children's martial souls have already awakened. The old village chief hurriedly said. Martial souls awakened? Su Yuntao's frown deepened, a puzzled expression on his face. I've always been responsible for the awakening of martial souls in your village. Could it be that other people from the martial soul hall came? That's not it. The old village chief shook his head. But these children have indeed awakened their martial souls. After saying that, the old village chief shouted at the group of children playing by the pond. Village chief, what's the matter? After a while, the group of children ran to the old village chief. Summon your martial souls and let Lord Deacon take a look, the old village chief said. Buzz, hearing the old village chief's words, the group of 6- and 7-year-old children nodded and opened their palms at the same time. At the same time, they summoned their martial souls and lit up their first 100-year soul rings. Not only did they awaken, but they also have soul rings. And 100-year one. Soul power rank 12. How is this possible? Seeing the soul rings light up on the group of children, Su Yuntao was stunned for a moment. Then, his pupils constricted and his face was filled with shock. What happened? Returning to his senses, Su Yuntao's gaze once again landed on the old village chief. His words carried a questioning tone. In the villages he'd been in charge of, it was already quite good for a single 6-year-old child to be born a 7th-rank soul warrior every year. However, the children of the Holy Soul Village had not only awakened their martial souls before his arrival, but they also had 100-year soul rings and rank 12 soul power. Something he didn't know must have happened. My lord, this is all thanks to Boss. I believe that under his leadership, our Holy Spirit Village will one day be famous throughout the entire continent. The old village chief looked back at the villagers who were still celebrating enthusiastically, his face full of yearning and anticipation for the future. Boss? Who was he? Where is it? Su Yuntao hurriedly asked. Village head, is he from the Martial Spirit Palace? He must be very rich. Before the village head could answer Su Yuntao's question, Dai Mubai, Wang Fan, and Ning Rongrong walked over. Since they were all first-level agents, compared to the second-level agents in the village, they naturally had a better relationship with each other. You're the little fatty who awakened his martial soul last year with a wooden stick and no soul power. Su Yuntao's gaze immediately fixed on Wang Fan. Among the children of the Holy Soul Village who awakened their martial souls last year, he had the deepest impression of this little fatty because he was called Goodener by the villagers. Sir Deacon, how are you? Wang Fan cupped his hands towards Su Yuntao and said, My martial soul is no longer a wooden stick, nor does it have 0 soul power. As he spoke, Wang Fan extended his palm, and 2 soul rings lit up on his body. Seeing the never-before-seen beast soul in Wang Fan's palm, as well as the genuine rank 21 soul power fluctuations, Su Yuntao was completely stunned. What's going on? Su Yuntao took a step forward, half bent his waist, and tightly placed his hands on Wang Fan's shoulders. Compared to before, the current Su Yuntao's expression was even more shocked and puzzled. If someone were to help these children awaken their martial soul and help them obtain soul rings, he would still be able to accept it. However, this fatty in front of him, who had personally awakened a trash martial soul and 0 soul power last year, had undergone a change that he could not accept. After living for dozens of years, he had never heard of anyone who could obtain soul power from nothing, let alone change martial soul power. Sir Deacon of the Martial Soul Hall, how much money do you have on you? With me, you can open a few boxes, and you'll know that nothing is too strange in this world. At that time, you'll also understand why Brother Wang Fan has changed so much. Dai Mubai winked at Su Yuntao, and after he finished speaking with a smile, 10 square boxes flew out from his proxy ring. What's this? Don't tell me there's a treasure inside? Su Yuntao glanced at the 10 square boxes in front of him, and his puzzled gaze landed on Dai Mubai. Sir Deacon, you're right. There really are treasures inside. Take my Class 6 opportunity boxes as an example. If there's a treasure inside, it'll be very beneficial to you. You'll be so excited that you won't be able to sleep for a month. Dai Mubai rubbed his hands and looked at Su Yuntao expectantly. How much is one? Looking at Dai Mubai's enthusiastic face and hearing his exaggerated words, Su Yuntao couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth, but he still asked. It's not expensive, just 800,000 soul coins. Dai Mubai looked at Su Yuntao with a smile. 800,000! After hearing Dai Mubai's price, Su Yuntao's face twitched slightly. He raised his right hand slightly, as if he wanted to slap this little guy who didn't know what money was. He had been saving for half of his life, and his savings were only 1,000,000 soul coins. However, his opponent dared to bid 800,000 soul coins for a lousy box. Sir Deacon, are you that poor? Dai Mubai curled the corner of his mouth when he saw Su Yuntao's expression. I can take out the money, but I'm afraid you won't be able to handle it. Su Yuntao took out his soul tool and took out 800,000 soul coins. He said proudly, See? I've taken out the money, but I don't know if the things in your box are worth it. Sir Deacon, you can go first. Dai Mubai was eager to try. Xiao Wu, Ning Rongrong, Tang San and the others were also full of anticipation. They didn't care how much they could earn, they just wanted to see the transaction process for themselves. Since they were all agents, they couldn't trade with each other. All right, I'd like to see what medicine you have in your gourd. Su Yuntao sneered. Buzz, just as Su Yuntao nodded, the ring on Dai Mubai's hand lit up with a beam of red light. In the next moment, the red light engulfed the 800,000 soul coins that Su Yuntao took out and disappeared together with it. Money? Where's my money? Su Yuntao was stunned at first, and his eyes widened. When he came back to his senses, he stared at Dai Mubai. He was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. That was half of his life savings. He took out 800,000 soul coins because he wanted to prove to Dai Mubai that he was rich. However, he didn't expect that 800,000 soul coins would disappear into thin air the moment he nodded to make the transaction. Sir Deacon, don't be anxious. I've taken your money, so I'll naturally give you the goods. Dai Mubai pointed at the 10 square boxes in front of him. You can pick one of them now. Hearing this, Su Yuntao glanced at the 10 square boxes and tried to remain calm for the time being. After all, the culprit was right in front of him. At most, he could force the other party to hand over the money. Thinking of this, Su Yuntao's expression softened. He snorted and chose the 7 square box from the left to the right. Boom! The square box flew in front of Su Yuntao. A loud explosion was heard. The eye-catching words, "Thank you for your patronage," were reflected in everyone's eyes. Sure enough, it won't work. Dai Mubai, Ning Rongrong, and the others looked at each other. Although they already knew that the probability of opening a box with "Thank you for your patronage" was very high when they became the agents, they still couldn't help but feel shocked when they saw it with their own eyes. After all, 800,000 soul coins wasn't a small amount. It was all because the words, "Thank you for your patronage," were all wasted. Little fellow, are you messing with me? Looking at the words that were gradually disappearing, Su Yuntao's face became completely gloomy. Intense anger rose in his eyes. After he shouted coldly, a faint green light was released from between Su Yuntao's eyebrows. In an instant, Su Yuntao's originally black hair turned gray and grew longer rapidly. His hands were almost covered by gray hair at the same time. His body expanded, and his whole body was filled with muscles. Looking at his eyes again, they had turned into a strange green color. The sharp claws on his hands flickered with a faint cold light. At the same time, 2 halos, one white and one yellow, lit up under his feet. Sir Deacon, opportunities often go hand in hand with risks. My box is the same. There is a certain probability that it will be a thank you for your patronage. Meeting Su Yuntao's cold in the forest gaze, Dai Mubai scratched his head apologetically. How about you buy another one? Little fellow, you're challenging my patience. Su Yuntao clearly thought that Dai Mubai was playing with him. His right hand covered in gray hair grabbed Dai Mubai's neck. Sir Deacon, this is really how our transaction is. There are opportunities and risks. I hope you can understand. Seeing Su Yuntao's actions, the village chief's face revealed a trace of panic as he hurriedly spoke. Scram! Su Yuntao snorted coldly. With a wave of his left hand, a wave of soul power intertwined and bombarded the village chief's body. With a bang, the village chief flew back a few meters. His face immediately turned pale. Village chief! A group of children immediately ran forward to support the village chief. Hearing the commotion, more and more villagers ran over. They glared at Su Yuntao with their fists tightly clenched. Su Yuntao glanced at the surrounding villagers and snorted. His eyes were filled with disdain. White Tiger Shield! Just as Su Yuntao lowered his head to look at Dai Mubai and was about to force him to hand over the money, the latter let out a low voice. As soon as the voice fell, Su Yuntao felt a layer of golden armor rise from Dai Mubai's body. It forcibly shook off the village chief's right hand that was gripping his throat. White Tiger Fierce Light Wave! Without waiting for Su Yuntao to recover from his shock, the other party let out a second sound. Following that, a wave of soul power that caused Su Yuntao's heart to palpitate surged out from his body. Sensing this wave of soul power, Su Yuntao's pupils suddenly shrank. He didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly retreated. However, as he retreated, the boy that he thought should be casually kneaded quickly followed him. At the same time, he punched out. The surface of his fist was wrapped in a dazzling golden light. How is this possible? Su Yuntao's face was filled with horror as he hurriedly punched out. Rumble! The two fists collided. In the instant of the collision, Su Yuntao's body, which was much larger than Dai Mubai's, flew out like a cannonball and crashed into the pond. Su Yuntao's miserable shrieks could be heard. Sir, are you all right? Seeing this scene, Su Yuntao's follower looked at Dai Mubai in horror and quickly ran to the side of the pond. Splash! Su Yuntao crawled out of the water in an extremely sorry state. When he looked at Dai Mubai again, his eyes were filled with fear and dread, especially when he saw that Dai Mubai's 4 soul rings had lit up. Let's go! Su Yuntao took a deep breath. After returning to the shore, he turned around and ran in the direction he had come from. Brother Dai, did you get a commission from the treasure box you just sold? Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and the rest looked in the direction Su Yuntao had left in before turning their gazes to Dai Mubai. A commission of 80,000. As he spoke, the ring on Oscar's right index finger lit up with a purple light. There were 80,000 soul coins inside. That's great! Oscar's face was filled with joy. The next day, everyone in the Holy Soul village had gathered by the pond. Everyone, we'll meet again if fate allows. I hope we'll all be rich when we meet again. Haha, this is just the beginning. What can you run to? Let's use this opportunity to make our names known throughout the continent. Among the second-level agents, the older ones were filled with yearning for a better future. Boss, I'm already capable of protecting myself. I'm going out to earn money. Oscar cupped his fists towards Chu Bei. The further he progressed, the more money he needed to upgrade. He couldn't always rely on Ning Rongrong. He had to rely on himself. Chu Bei nodded. If you encounter any danger, remember to contact me through the Void Sound Transmission Stone immediately. Also, don't forget to use the All Heavens shop's name. Understood. Everyone replied in unison. Gradually, the agents left one after another and ran towards the cities they had chosen. Oscar left. Dai Mubai used the teleportation formation to return to the Star Luo Empire. He said it was easier to find rich people there. Ning Rongrong also used the teleportation formation to return to the 7 Treasures Glazed sect. Her thoughts were the same as Dai Mubai's. Xiao Wu, Tang San, and Wang Fan accepted the money that Dai Mubai and Ning Rongrong left behind. They were prepared to stay by Chu Bei's side for a few more days to increase their cultivation before leaving. As he watched the agents leave, the corners of Chu Bei's mouth curled up slightly. He had successfully taken the first step towards building a business empire. Chapter 200. The headquarters of the Martial Spirit Hall, the meeting hall of the Pontiff's palace. Reporting to the Pontiff, Su Yuntao, the deacon of the Heaven Do Empire's Fasno province, has sent a message. A man in black rushed into the meeting hall with a respectful expression. Since when do you have to report to me the news of a deacon? The cold voice carried a hint of dissatisfaction. It was a woman in a luxurious black robe inlaid with golden patterns. She wore a 9-song purple gold crown and held a 2-meter-long scepter inlaid with countless gems. She had fair skin and an almost perfect face, making her look so different from the rest. In particular, the invisible nobility and holiness exuding from his body caused people to involuntarily prostrate themselves in worship. Bibi Dong, the current pontiff of the martial spirit hall, stood at the peak of the continent. Pontiff, I naturally wouldn't disturb you with ordinary news. But this time, Su Yintao's message made me a little uncertain. After much deliberation, I decided to report to you. The man in black half knelt in front of Bibi Dong and said, Fine, tell me. Bibi Dong's cold voice drifted in the hall. This morning, Su Yuntao went to a village where he was to awaken the martial souls of the 6-year-old children. However, when he arrived, he found that not only did the children awaken their martial souls, they all had 100-year soul rings and their soul power had all reached rank 12. After Su Yuntao asked, he found out that the person who helped the children awaken their martial souls was a person called Boss by the villagers. The man in black looked at Bibi Dong and said slowly, Is he a merchant? What's his background? Bibi Dong was interested and asked, I don't know. The man in black shook his head. Seeing Bibi Dong frown, the man in black hurriedly added, Su Yuntao didn't even have time to meet the so-called boss before he was tricked by a 12-year-old boy and swindled of 800,000 soul coins. He was even seriously injured. What? A deacon of the martial spirit hall was seriously injured by a 10-year-old child? Are all the people you chose trash? Bibi Dong's scepter trembled. He was astonished and at the same time, he let out an angry snort. Your Majesty, Su Yuntao is a rank 30 Soul Grand Master. He already has the qualifications to be a deacon in a remote area. The reason why he was so heavily injured is because this boy is already a Soul Exalt. The black-robed man took a deep breath. An 11 or 12-year-old Soul Exalt. Bibi Dong stared at the black-robed man with a serious expression. Are you sure that boy is a Soul Exalt? Su Yuntao doesn't have the guts to lie to me. Feeling Bibi Dong's domineering aura, the black-clothed man hurriedly knelt down and immediately responded. If that's the case, then you must bring this 11 or 12-year-old boy to me. For a Soul Exalt to be this young, there's definitely a lot of secrets on him. Bibi Dong waved the scepter in his hand as he gave the order. Yes, Your Highness the Pope. The black-clothed man responded respectfully, got up, and quickly retreated. At the same time, in the Holy Soul Village. Boss, are we leaving again? Looking at the spatial shuttle in front of them, Xiao Wu raised her head to look at Chu Bei and blurted out. With the money that Dai Mubai and Ning Rongrong had left behind, she, Tang San, and Wang Fan had all become soul ancestors from rank 21 Soul Grandmasters. But not long after their cultivation had increased, their boss had summoned the spatial shuttle. You'll know when you get there. It's a good place. Chu Bei left them in suspense. His trip this time was naturally to sign a contract with the next rank 1 agent. An E-town was located at the intersection of the Heaven Do Empire, the Star Luo Empire, and the Great Star Do Forest. Due to its special geographical location, an E-town was a no-man's land in the truest sense of the word. Although this town was called an E-town, the people who lived here were not at ease. They even had to be on tenterhooks when they slept. This was because it had another name, the City of Massacre. Boss, is this the destination of our trip? Why do I feel that this place is so eerie? Tang San raised his eyes to look at Chu Bei and asked tentatively. The town they were currently in wasn't very big, but the moment they stepped in, he felt that the atmosphere around them was a little strange. He couldn't pinpoint exactly what was strange about it, but he felt that the people around him had a special chill to them. If you live here, your combat experience will be greatly improved in the shortest time possible. Chu Bei looked at Tang San and smiled. Perhaps it was because he was a young man with 3 children, but Chu Bei's group of 4 quickly became the center of attention as they walked on the street. Boss, just tell us what this place is. These people are looking at us with very unfriendly eyes. Tang San tugged at Chu Bei's arm and pointed at the people around them. Ignore them. Chu Bei smiled indifferently. You just need to know that this place could be the headquarters of our All Heavens shop. If we really choose a location here, then we'll be the rulers of this place. Chu Bei's words were filled with confidence. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Tang San, Oscar, and Xiao Wu looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders. In the end, they still didn't know where this place was. Under Chu Bei's lead, the group of 4 walked into a tavern. The air in the tavern was very turbid, and all the decorations in the tavern were black. Although it was still daytime, there was a cold and dark feeling when they walked in. Looking around, about 30% of the seats in the tavern were filled. The air in the tavern was turbid, and very few people spoke. It was very quiet. The arrival of Chu Bei's group of 4 successfully attracted the attention of everyone in the tavern, but most of them only gave them a quick glance before looking away. Sir, what would you like to drink? Before Chu Bei walked to the counter, a black-clothed waiter with an indifferent expression walked over. I'm not drinking. Just open the door, Chu Bei said with a faint smile. Sir, you must be joking. How can I open the door for you without passing the test? The waiter's expression changed slightly. If you must drink something, then give me 4 cups of water. Chu Bei looked at the waiter calmly. Sir, are you sure you want to drink water? The waiter's expression was completely gloomy, and his voice was cold. Where did this fledgling come from? He actually came here to drink water. Don't you know where this place is? If you've mistakenly entered here, quickly go back to where you came from. Ha ha ha, hurry up and take your 3 babies home to suck their milk. Don't be so scared that you'll piss your pants. This is the first time I've met such an idiot. Don't you know that the people here only drink human blood? In an instant, all kinds of mocking voices filled the tavern. The customers seemed to have found a way to vent their depression, and unreservedly scolded Chu Bei. Chu Bei glanced at the people around him, smiled, and ignored them. After that, he led Tang San, Wang Fan, and Xiao Wu to an empty table nearby. Sanner, load up your Zhuge divine crossbows and give 1 to each of them. Chu Bei looked at Tang San, and pointed at Xiao Wu and Wang Fan after he finished speaking. All right. As he met Chu Bei's gaze, Tang San was confused. He didn't understand what he was trying to do, but he immediately executed his orders. After that, Tang San retrieved a pile of finished components from his ring, which could be used as a substitute soul tool, and started to install them. Not long after, Tang San installed the first Zhuge divine crossbow, which was equipped with several arrows. After installing the first set, Tang San quickly installed the second set, and the third set. Little San, did you tinker with these while you were forging? Wang Fan's mouth was wide open, and his face was filled with astonishment. Xiao Wu was also astonished as she looked at Tang San's skillful movements, and her mouth was slightly agape. This little fellow seems to be quite interesting. This is the first time I've seen a weapon like this. It's really interesting. Don't fight with me. I've taken a liking to this fellow. If anyone else has such thoughts, ask the sword in my hand first. Haha, my blade has been thirsty for a long time. It's time for it to drink blood. Haha, with his skills, whoever gets him won't have to spend money to buy weapons in the future. Inside the bar, a bunch of burly men put down their chopsticks and stood up one after another. They moved closer to Tang San. Their expressions were filled with greed, and their eyes were filled with bloodlust. Boss, it's done. Tang San glanced at the bunch of burly men who had gathered around him, and then lifted his head to look at Chu Bei. After that, he kept one of the 3 Zhuge divine crossbows for himself, and gave the other 2 to Xiao Wu and Wang Fan. Chu Bei nodded, and then lifted his hand and pointed at the burly men who were approaching. His voice turned cold. Kill them! Chu Bei's sudden order stunned Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan. They looked at each other, and didn't know what to do. Obviously, they didn't expect that their boss would give them such an order. Ha ha ha, did you hear that? This kid wants the 3 kids to kill us. This is the funniest joke I've heard since I was born. I'm dying of laughter. Kid, I think you're tired of living. I'll use you as a blood sacrifice for my blade. The group of burly men laughed wildly at Chu Bei's words, and their eyes were filled with disdain and ridicule. Chu Bei still ignored the group of burly men, and his eyes paused briefly on Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan. Aren't you curious about where this place is? It's also called the capital of massacre. No one who comes here is free from death. Every one of them has at least 10 people's blood on their hands. Because they were chased in the outside world, they fled here. To survive here, being merciful to the enemy is being cruel to yourself. After saying that, Chu Bei lowered his voice. The way to survive is to never be merciful to those who deserve to be killed. Chapter 201. Brat, why are you talking about principles now? A burly man with a large saber jumped over a chair and stared coldly at Chu Bei. I'll chop you up first. However, before the man could swing his large blade, a black arrow pierced through the center of his forehead with a swooshing sound. Clang! The large saber in the man's hand fell to the ground, creating a crisp sound. Following that, the burly man's body fell to the ground. His eyes were wide open, and he died with a grievance. Tang San attacked first. He was no stranger to killing people, as he had experienced it in his previous life. Furthermore, he agreed with Chu Bei's principle of survival: never show mercy to those who deserve to be killed. Swoosh! After killing the burly man who had pounced towards Chu Bei, Tang San aimed his Zhuge crossbow in another direction and shot out another arrow. Another burly man with a knife scar fell to the ground with a loud bang. Xiao Wu, of course we have to obey the boss's words. Before Wang Fan could finish speaking, Xiao Wu smiled sweetly. After she finished speaking, Xiao Wu held the Zhuge crossbow and stood side by side with Tang San. She shot the first arrow. Wang Fan still didn't move. He only held the Zhuge crossbow tightly and stood there hesitantly. Kill these 4 fellows, and you can pass the test and enter the real capital of massacre. At this moment, the waiter who was watching the show said coldly. Almost at the same time the waiter finished speaking, the atmosphere in the pub was boiling. Bloody light rose in the eyes of the burly men. Even those who weren't interested in attacking Chu Bei charged over with their weapons after the waiter's words. Little fellow, I'll kill you first. Suddenly, a tall and thin man snuck to Wang Fan's side. He licked his lips and killing intent surged in his eyes. As the Zhuge divine crossbow was too powerful, he didn't dare to face it head-on. However, the test to enter the capital of massacre was to kill this group of people. Fortunately, he noticed that there was a timid fellow in the group. Although he held the Zhuge divine crossbow, he didn't dare to kill anyone. After coming to Wang Fan's side, the tall and thin man's 2 yellow soul rings lit up. At the same time, he swung the saber in his hand and aimed it at Wang Fan's head. Brother Gooden, be careful! Sensing that the tall skinny man had snuck up to Wang Fan, Tang San shouted loudly and hurriedly changed the direction of the crossbow in his hand, shooting it out. Whoosh! Just as the knife in the lanky man's hand was about to hit Wang Fan's head, a sharp sound broke through the air, and a pitch-black arrow pierced through the lanky man's temple. Plop! Looking at the corpse of the tall and thin man beside him, Wang Fan's body trembled as if he had fallen into a trance. Little Fan, you will have to take this step sooner or later. If it wasn't for Little 3, you would have already died under his blade. In most cases, you only have 2 choices. One is to kill, and the other is to be killed. Chu Bei's calm voice sounded in Wang Fan's ears. Boss, I didn't kill anyone. Wang Fan gulped, his hands trembling as he held the Zhuge crossbow. Since it's going to take this step sooner or later, why not let it take it earlier? The earlier you take it, the better you can protect the people you want to protect. Sometimes being merciful will not only harm yourself, but also the people closest to you. Chu Bei said sincerely. Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Wang Fan was silent for a moment. After a while, he took a deep breath and walked to Chu Bei and Xiao Wu's side with the Zhiga divine crossbow. Whoosh! An arrow shot out. Looking at the corpse that was shot by Wang Fan, Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile. There was a hint of relief in his smile. Among the three of them, Tang San had lived 2 lives, Xiao Wu was 100,000-year-soul beast, and only Wang Fan, who had only lived for 7 years, was as pure as a piece of white paper. Fortunately, Chu Bei had achieved his goal. He had successfully stained the hands of the 3 of them with blood, especially the most cowardly Wang Fan. Kill these people and you will be able to enter the true city of massacre. From then on, you will be protected by the King of Massacre. In order to motivate everyone in the hall, the staff member's cold voice sounded again. Indeed, the staff member's words were very effective. The group of burly men, who were already thinking of retreating, pounced towards Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan once again. However, before Tang San and Xiao Wu could activate the Zhiga divine crossbow, Chu Bei appeared in front of them. He waved his right hand. An energy palm print that contained a frightening aura extended from Chu Bei's palm. Wherever the energy palm print passed, blood and flesh splattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, the burly men who had surrounded them were turned into meat patties. It was extremely bloody. Smelling the nauseating smell in the air and looking at Chu Bei's cold eyes, the staff member's face turned pale. The 2 red drinks in his hands fell to the ground. I'm protected by the King of Massacre. You can't kill me. The staff member looked in horror at the demon-like figure that was getting closer and closer. His body trembled as he leaned against the wall. Chu Bei looked at the staff member who was scared out of his wits with disdain. He waved his hand again, and the energy palm print smashed the staff member into pieces of flesh and blood, splattering all over the bar. After killing the staff member, Chu Bei looked at the corner of the wall. His right leg trembled slightly. A majestic force swept through the corner of the wall. After shattering a series of floorboards, a huge square hole was revealed. In the hole, a cold wind blew from below. It was bone-chilling. You can't go on like this. You haven't been recognized yet. Barging in rashly is not in accordance with the rules set by the King of Massacre. Seeing the gap, the other waiters in the tavern had a look of fear on their faces. If they allowed this group of people to successfully enter the city of Massacre, they would be derelict in their duties. In the city of Massacre, there was only one outcome for dereliction of duty: death. Thinking of this, the other staff members didn't know where they got the courage to open their arms and block in front of Chu Bei's group of 4. Are you sure you want to block my way? Chu Bei narrowed his eyes. His voice was cold in the forest. Hearing this, the staff members who were blocking the way trembled. They looked at their companion who had been smashed into meat paste. Out of fear, they instinctively moved to the side and opened up a path. Go on. Chu Bei turned around to look at Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan. Then, he jumped into the square opening first. After entering the square hole, Chu Bei's group of 4 landed on the ground after falling a few meters. This was a long passageway that extended downwards at a slanted angle. A gloomy and cold aura constantly blew upwards. Boss, is this the way to the real city of Massacre? Recalling the staff member's words, Tang San raised his head and looked at Chu Bei. Yes. Chu Bei nodded in response. Welcome to the city of Massacre. This is the capital of hell, a world filled with slaughter. Here you can get everything you want. The price is your life. After walking for less than 100 meters, a cold voice sounded from the path. Master, I see someone. Hearing the voice, Tang San quickened his pace. After turning a corner, a ray of light appeared in his line of sight. Looking over, there was a black city outside the path. The thick city walls had countless years of history, giving off a sense of vicissitudes. In the sky above the city, there was a purple moon. The moon was very low, as if it was less than 500 meters above the ground. Looking up again, everything was black, just like the night sky. Stop! Chu Bei's group of 4 had just passed through the path when a series of hurried and low footsteps sounded. Then, close to 100 people blocked their path. These people were all dressed in black armor, with helmets on their heads. Their faces were completely covered. Each of them was holding a heavy sword. Only the leader at the front was sitting on a tall warhorse. His horse was also covered in thick black armor. Who are you people? Why are you blocking our path? Tang San took a step forward and looked at the leader of the opposite side. But when Tang San's voice fell, he quickly realized that something was wrong with his body. He couldn't help but frown. After coming here, he realized that the soul power in his body was suppressed. As for soul skills, he couldn't use them. Boss, it seems like I can't use my soul skills. Wang Fan also realized that something was wrong with his body. He looked at Chu Bei with a puzzled expression. Sensing Wang Fan and Tang San's puzzled gaze, Chu Bei glanced at the army of black-armored knights and said, "The city of Massacre was built by the Azura god. Here, he set a rule that no one can use soul skills. They can only use their own body to kill each other. If the people who come in can break through the path he left behind, they can obtain his Massacre God domain." Massacre God domain? What's that? Tang San and Wang Fan were even more confused. I didn't expect you to know so much about the city of Massacre. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the leader of the black-armored knights looked surprised. He came to the city of Massacre decades ago. But even he only knew that the city of Massacre was left behind by a person who became a god at rank 100. He didn't know which god it was. Unexpectedly, this newcomer in front of him, who looked like he was in his 20s, actually knew about the city of Massacre and seemed to know it very well. It's a pity that you didn't come in through the normal process and violated the rules set by the Massacre King. The leader of the black-armored knights squinted his eyes and stared at Chu Bei. His low voice was filled with coldness. As the enforcers of this place, I must keep you here. His cold and emotionless voice fell. The leader of the black-armored knights made a horizontal slashing gesture with his right hand. In the next moment, the 100-man army behind him wielded heavy swords and charged toward Chu Bei's group of 4. Chu Bei glanced at the army indifferently. He was expressionless. Using his fingers as a sword, he casually waved them. Chi! With a strange sharp sound, the void where Chu Bei's fingertips swept past split open, extending a slender pitch-black gap. Then, a huge sword light more than 100 meters long swept toward the army of black-armored knights with an ear-piercing sound. Chapter 202. Chi La. 100-foot-long sword light swept across the sky. It was so fast that it left everyone speechless. The 100-man cavalry charging towards Chu Bei didn't even have time to react. They didn't even have time to scream before they were sliced in half by the sword light. How is this possible? The leading black-armored knight's eyes narrowed as he stared at the corpses that had turned into a pile of flesh. The disdain in his eyes when he looked at Chu Bei disappeared. It was replaced by fear. The black-armored knight grabbed the reins of his horse tightly, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Just a moment ago, these 100-man cavalry were still his capable subordinates. However, they had turned into a pile of bloody corpses in an instant. Boss, you're really much more ruthless than us. Looking at the hellish scene in front of him, even Tang San, who had lived 2 lives, could not help but take a deep breath and give Chu Bei a thumbs up. This boss either didn't make a move, or once he did, blood would flow like a river. Thinking back to how he had used the Zhuge divine crossbow to kill people one by one, it was nothing compared to what he was doing now. Xiao Wu and Wang Fan looked at each other. Both of them had strange expressions on their faces. They didn't know if they were shocked by Chu Bei's methods, or if they were frightened by his ruthlessness. Why can you still use soul skills here? Even titled Dolo will have to follow the rules here. Who are you? How can you ignore the rules here? The black-armored knight recovered from his shock and stared at Chu Bei. His voice was trembling, and he had a look of disbelief on his face. According to what he knew, the Martial Soul Hall had once wanted to take over the capital of Massacre. They had even sent 2 titled Doloa to lead a team here. However, these 2 titled Doloa lost their soul skills here. In the end, they were easily killed by the King of Massacre. It was also because of this that the Martial Soul Hall didn't dare to think about taking over the capital of Massacre. Chu Bei didn't answer the black-armored knight's question. He placed his hands behind his back and smiled faintly. He leisurely led Tang San and the others forward. "I'm the emissary representing the King of Massacre. You can't come here, and you can't kill me. If you kill me, you will be punished by the King of Massacre." Sensing the coldness in Chu Bei's eyes, the fear on the black-armored knight's face intensified, and he retreated continuously. At the same time, his 5 soul rings lit up, 2 yellow, 2 purple, and 1 black. He was a rank 56 soul king, and because he was the envoy of the King of Massacre, he could even use his soul skills to kill rank 70 soul sages who couldn't use their soul skills. But for some unknown reason, he couldn't arouse a trace of battle intent when facing this young man of unknown origins. Although the strange aura that the other party released and enveloped him was different from the killing god domain of the King of Massacre, it still gave him an indescribably terrifying pressure, causing him to feel powerless. This feeling was as if the other party was a high and mighty king looking down on the world, while he was a prostrating subject. "Everyone who has tried to attack me has died. You won't be an exception." Chu Bei's eyes were half closed, and there was a hint of a cold in the forest smile in his voice. As he finished speaking, Chu Bei used his fingers as a sword and slashed out again. As the sound of the air being torn apart could be heard, the sharp sword aura instantly arrived. The black-armored knight couldn't react in time, and he instinctively placed his spear in front of him. Following a loud sound, a warhorse neighed, and a 4-meter-long spear was split into 2. It broke through the air and flew far away. On the other hand, the black-armored knight's entire body was split into 2 by the sword aura. After crashing to the ground, he twitched for a moment before he stopped moving, and his aura was completely gone. "Boss, why can you still use your soul skills and ignore the rules here?" Tang San glanced at the black-armored knight's corpse before he quickly ran in front of Chu Bei and asked the black-armored knight the same question as before. Chu Bei glanced at Tang San, then looked at Wang Fan and Xiao Wu, who were also confused, and said with a smile, "In front of absolute strength, any rules are like decorations. Moreover, what I used was not a soul skill." "Not a soul skill? Then what was it?" Tang San and the other 2 were shocked. "On the path of cultivation there are thousands of methods. Martial souls and soul skills are only one of them." Chu Bei tidied his clothes and continued, "When you are strong enough, you will understand what I mean. Boss, what is your cultivation level? What about the Azura god who created this massacre city?" Wang Fan seemed to have thought of something and asked curiously. 50-50. Meeting Wang Fan's naive gaze, Chu Bei coughed softly and immediately looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle, putting on the appearance of an expert. Before the 11th rank commodity authority was unlocked, he wasn't sure if he could defeat the Azura god. After all, he had never fought before. However, as the faith of these 3 little guys, he couldn't say that he couldn't defeat it. No matter what, this aura must be adjusted to the right place. "Boss, are you also a god?" Tang San whispered softly. Hearing this, Chu Bei didn't say anything and continued forward. In front of them, the pitch-black city gate gave people an extremely oppressive feeling. On the huge city gate, the words, "Massacre City," hung high. In front of the gate, 2 rows of black-armored warriors stood there quietly. "You! Why are you here? Didn't Lord Scarlet drive you away?" Chu Bei's group of 4 had just arrived in front of the city wall when a woman with a black veil on her face, who was guarding the city gate, revealed a look of horror. "Are you talking about the black-armored knights? They have all been killed by the boss." Tang San stepped forward and looked at the black-veiled woman and said, "What? You killed Lord Scarlet." Hearing Tang San's words, the black-veiled woman trembled fiercely. "The Massacre King will punish you. Quickly go and tell this to the Massacre King you speak of. I came for him this time. Remember to tell him that I will be waiting for him in the Hell Massacre field." Speaking of this, Chu Bei's voice became low, and he looked coldly at the black-veiled woman, saying, "If you don't go and tell him, you don't have to leave." Feeling the power on Chu Bei's body and the threat in his words, the black-veiled woman's face turned pale. After she reacted, she staggered, turned around, and ran into the city. Entering the city, blue-purple lights hung on both sides of the street. Since there were only these two types of light, this place could be said to be a bluish-purple world at first glance. Although there were many pedestrians on the street, not many people paid attention to Chu Bei's group of 4. Apart from this underground city being a little darker, it was no different from the cities under the jurisdiction of the 2 great empires. Walking along the main road, there was another city wall at the end. The words, "Inner City," hanging above the city wall were particularly obvious. As soon as they entered the inner city, the pungent smell of blood assailed their nostrils. Unlike the outer city, the inner city could be said to be extremely rotten. Just by glancing around, one could see several unsightly scenes. Although he was mentally prepared before coming to the Massacre City, witnessing these scenes with his own eyes still made him feel nauseous. "Boss, what is your purpose in bringing us here?" Tang San covered his nose with his right hand and looked at Chu Bei again. Looking at the scenes in the inner city, he didn't want to stay a moment longer. Take the male corpse that suddenly fell to the right of him. A second ago, this man was still having sex with the woman who killed him. The next second, when he was about to climax, his throat was slit by the woman with a sharp blade, and the blood in his body was sucked by the woman as a delicious drink. Sign a first-class agent. Chu Bei finally said the purpose of this trip. "What? You also have a first-class agent in this place." Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan's faces became ugly. Those who lived in the Massacre City were all vicious and evil people. They really didn't want to get along with such a person. "Don't worry, he's just temporarily lost." Chu Bei seemed to know what Tang San and the others were thinking and gave them a comforting look. While talking, Chu Bei and the others arrived at the core of the Massacre City, the Hell Slaughterhouse. This was a special building. It was circular as a whole. To be more precise, it was a non-standard conical shape. The area at the bottom was the largest, and the higher it went, the narrower it became. At a height of about 30 meters from the ground, it maintained the same diameter, all the way up to 50 meters. Entering the Hell Slaughterhouse, there was a clamor in their ears, and there was no lack of cheers and shouts. The first thing that came into view was a huge circular fighting ring. Around the fighting ring were rows of exquisite seats from bottom to top. This special arrangement ensured that everyone on the seats could see the fight on the fighting ring. At this moment, there were 2 men fighting fiercely on the fighting ring. One of them was holding a sawtooth machete with both hands. His movements didn't seem fast, but it felt like Mount Tai was pressing down on him, and there were strong soul power undulations. The other person was holding a machete with a cold light, and his soul power undulations weren't weaker than his opponent's. At the back of the fighting ring, there was a row of exquisite seats. There were a total of 7 seats, and they were all filled with people. From the way these 7 people were dressed, it was clear that they were the people in charge of the Hell's Slaughterhouse. "Boss, they're all very strong." Wang Fan pointed at the 2 people on the fighting ring. From the frightening power that was released when they clashed, it was clear that they were Soul Kings above rank 50. Whether it was the Star Luo Empire or the Heaven Do Empire, such people were at least generals. "Since we're already here, find a seat and follow me." Chu Bei rubbed Wang Fan's head, and then looked in the direction of the fighting ring. To be precise, he was looking in the direction of the 7 people in charge of the Hell's Slaughterhouse. "Boss, there's still an empty seat." Xiao Wu looked at the empty seat closest to her, and there was a puzzled look in her eyes. However, when she saw Chu Bei walking further and further away, Xiao Wu quickly followed him. When Chu Bei and the other three entered the Hell Slaughterhouse, they didn't attract anyone's attention. However, as they leisurely walked towards the fighting ring, and as they got closer and closer, people gradually turned to look at them. When Chu Bei's group of 4 ascended the stairs and ascended the combat arena, they instantly became the center of attention of everyone in the slaughter grounds. Even the 2 Soul Kings who were fighting on the battlefield stopped fighting at the same time. They shot their gazes towards Chu Bei's group of 4, and their faces were filled with confusion and incomprehension. Fuck, what the hell are those fellows doing? Are they crazy? Can't they see that there are people fighting in the ring? They even have 3 kids with them. I've never seen them before. Are they new here? However, if they can safely enter the Hell Slaughterhouse, it means that they have some ability. They should know the rules here. I've been in the City of Massacres for 10 years, and I've never seen a situation like this. Today is really an eye-opener. Aren't these fellows afraid of death? What are they trying to do? Could it be that they are being controlled by someone? Don't think so much. I only know that there's going to be a good show to watch. Hee, there will be 4 more corpses on the stage soon. There are even 3 children's corpses. Just thinking about it makes me excited. I really want to taste their blood. When Chu Bei and the other 3 stepped onto the fighting ring, the entire Hell Slaughterhouse was in an uproar. In fact, more than half of the spectators stood up from their chairs with excitement in their eyes. Kid, don't tell me you want to bring the 3 kids behind you to join our fight? Tell me, which side of the 2 of us are you going to help? In the ring, the man with the sawtooth machete looked at Chu Bei mockingly, and there was a hint of mockery in his voice. As soon as the man finished speaking, his opponent, as well as the spectators in the slaughterhouse, burst into laughter at the same time. Chu Bei glanced at the man with the machete and shook his head. He ignored the mocking laughter of the spectators around him and continued to lead Tang San and Xiao Wu to the row of seats at the back of the fighting ring. It seems like you're all new here. You don't know the rules here. I've been the manager of the slaughterhouse for almost 20 years. And this is the first time I've encountered such a situation. Because there's no precedent, I don't know how to deal with you. It's really difficult. Among the 7 seats, the hunchbacked old man sitting in the middle stood up. He was wearing a long black robe, and the word slaughterhouse was especially eye-catching on the back of his robe. Manager Zhou is going to deal with this personally? From the looks of it, these fellows are rather fortunate. I didn't expect to alarm Manager Zhou. In my memory, Manager Zhou hasn't really cared about anything ever since he became a Soul Dalul. Even when he's in the slaughterhouse, he's just taking a nap and going through the motions. How do you think Manager Zhou is going to deal with that kid and the 3 kids behind him? He's definitely going to make an example out of them. Otherwise, what if there are people who don't know what's good for them and interrupt the fight in the future? Seeing the hunchbacked old man stand up, the spectators in the slaughterhouse had bloodthirsty looks in their eyes. Forget it. It's better to kill them. The hunchbacked old man sighed, as if he had made a decision. I knew it. Just as I thought. Hearing the hunchbacked old man's words, the spectators exclaimed. However, just as the spectators in the slaughterhouse were eagerly waiting for the hunchbacked old man to kill Chu Bei and the 3 kids, their pupils suddenly shrank in the next moment. At the same time, the noisy atmosphere in the slaughterhouse froze. Chapter 203. In the slaughterhouse, everyone in the spectator stands had extremely twisted expressions. Their eyes were wide open as they stared blankly at the scene in the arena. Their throats were instinctively moving. In the arena, the expressions of the 2 burly men who were originally fighting also suddenly froze. It was as if they were suddenly possessed. Their eyes were lifeless, as if they were struck by lightning. At this moment, the youth with the 3 children stretched out his right hand, and an enormous energy palm extended from his palm. Just as the hunchbacked old man threatened to kill Chu Bei, this energy palm took the initiative to grab the hunchbacked old man. The hunchbacked old man's entire body was enveloped by the energy palm. Only his hideous head was exposed as he let out a painful wail. As the energy palm rubbed, the hunchbacked old man's face became increasingly pale, and his wail became even more shrill. During this period, 8 soul rings lit up above the hunchbacked old man's head. However, after a few seconds, they dimmed again and disappeared. Crack, crack. The slaughterhouse became even more deathly silent. Only the crisp sound of bones grinding and the hunchbacked old man's painful wail could be heard. The intertwining of the two sounds was like a demonic sound from the real hell, and it shook the hearts of everyone present. The person who was playing the music was the youth with the 3 children who they had treated as prey to amuse themselves. The hunchbacked old man's blood flowed down the giant palm. In a few breaths' time, his blood dyed the entire arena. It was a ghastly sight. Suddenly, the wail intensified. The hunchbacked old man's eyeballs suddenly protruded. Then, the wail stopped abruptly, and his expression completely froze. He actually killed Manager Zhou. Manager Zhou was a soul Doluo. Who exactly is he? Could he be a titled Dolu? Didn't they say that even a titled Doluo can't use soul skills here? Then how did he kill Manager Zhou? What's his motive for coming to the slaughterhouse? The hunchbacked old man's final wail woke everyone up from their shock. After regaining their senses, all of their gazes were focused on Chu Bei's back. Their eyes were filled with intense fear. Don't threaten to kill me so easily! As his cold voice fell, Chu Bei waved his hand, and the hunchbacked old man's corpse that had been crushed into meat paste by the giant energy palm fell to the side. As for the 2 burly men who were fighting earlier, they glanced at the hunchbacked old man's corpse and glanced at each other before trembling as they jumped off the stage. Damn it, how dare you sneak attack Manager Zhou! 2 deacons from the row of seats where the hunchbacked old man had been sitting were the first to react. Their voices were filled with killing intent as their 7 soul rings lit up at the same time. Blazing netherworld cannon! Acheron's ice! The 2 deacons shot up from their chairs at the same time, their bodies bursting with terrifying soul power fluctuations. Then, his 7 soul rings started to beat at the same time. One of them shot out a fireball the size of a soccer ball from his palm. The fireball instantly raised the temperature of the arena, and the scorching flames burned the void with sizzling sounds. The other person clenched his fists, which was the exact opposite of the former. His fists were filled with a bone-piercing chill, and a huge icicle appeared out of thin air. What a fancy move! However, before the 2 deacons' attacks could land on Chu Bei's body, the huge energy palm that had yet to disappear was pushed forward before it bent and slapped horizontally. With a loud boom, the fireball was destroyed, and the icicle disappeared. 2 lumps of minced meat slammed into the arena, echoing the hunchbacked old man's corpse from afar. Gulp. At this moment, the Hell Slaughterhouse became even more deathly silent. After casually dealing with 2 deacons, Chu Bei looked at the remaining 4 deacons. When they met Chu Bei's indifferent gaze, the 4 deacons looked at each other and made the same decision. They all stood up and left their seats. The spectators around the arena saw the 4 deacons leave their seats, and there was no disdain in their eyes. Instead, there was praise in their eyes. If it were them, they would have made the same choice. A terrifying existence that could easily kill a soul Doloa was definitely not someone they could provoke. Looking at the empty seat in front of him, Chu Bei's lips curled into a smile. He waved his hand gently, and the huge energy palm disappeared. After that, under everyone's gaze, he stepped forward and sat in the main seat that the hunchbacked old man had been sitting on. Tang San first swept his gaze across the horrified spectators, then looked at the 4 deacons who had retreated to the side. Finally, his gaze landed on Chu Bei, and his heart trembled. At this moment, he finally understood the profound meaning behind the words that his unknown boss had said to him. Absolute strength could disregard all restraints. Why are the 3 of you still standing there like idiots? Come and sit over here. Chu Bei waved at Tang San, Wang Fan, and Xiao Wu. Oh. Tang San and the other 2 responded and sat beside Chu Bei. After sitting down, Tang San and Xiao Wu were still relatively calm. As for Wang Fan, he felt as if he was sitting on pins and needles. This was the first time he had been stared at by so many strange gazes. Which one of you can go and urge the king of massacre? I'm getting a little impatient. Chu Bei's cold gaze landed on one of the deacons. Meeting Chu Bei's cold gaze, that deacon shuddered. After glancing at the 3 pools of flesh and blood not far away, he quickly ran towards the entrance of the slaughterhouse. Is this person here to find the king of massacre? How many years has it been? Perhaps we can use this opportunity to meet him. He has killed a manager and 2 vice managers. The city of massacre can't tolerate him anymore. However, this fellow is also ridiculously strong. If he fights the king of massacre, who do you think will win? In my opinion, it should be the king of massacre. After all, this is the home ground of the king of massacre. He's the ruler here. 2 titled Doloa from the martial soul hall died here. It's hard to say. Those 2 titled Doloa died because they couldn't use their soul skills. However, he isn't restricted by this aspect. Everyone around the fighting ring secretly glanced at Chu Bei, who was sitting on the main seat, and discussed in low voices. In a dark and spacious room in the inner city of massacre. It was an exceptionally huge chair. The chair was inlaid with blue and purple crystals. The crystals formed the shape of a drum tower. Other than this chair, everything else in the room was dark red. He killed my people and even threatened to let me take the initiative to enter the slaughterhouse. How many years has it been since I've seen someone so arrogant? A tall figure sat on the huge chair. His appearance couldn't be seen clearly in the darkness. One could only vaguely see that he was thin and tall. Great King, do you want to go over? The black-veiled woman asked respectfully as she stood beside the tall man. Do you think he has the right to ask me to go over? Go and get Zhou Hui to find him. Kill him and bring his corpse to me. I want to see what this arrogant fellow looks like. The tall man sitting on the chair snorted coldly. 2 blood-red rays of light shot out from his eyes. The surrounding air became viscous, and a strong smell of blood spread in all directions. Great King, this servant will go and inform Manager Zhou. The black-veiled woman bowed to the tall man. However, just as she was about to leave, there was an urgent knock on the door. Come in. The tall man's indifferent voice sounded. A man pushed the door open and ran in frantically. He knelt in front of the tall man. This person was one of the deacons of the slaughterhouse. What happened? Why are you so flustered? The king of massacre glanced coldly at the man and questioned. Great King, something bad has happened. Someone is causing trouble in the slaughterhouse. Manager Zhou, Manager Nan, and Manager Meng have all been killed by him. The man's expression was very ugly. He urged me to come and inform you. He wants you to go over quickly. What? Even Zhou Hui was killed by him. After hearing the man's words, the king of massacre stood up from his chair. There was a hint of astonishment in his voice. Zhou Hui was a rank 83 soul Doloa. If he could use soul skills, he could deal with a titled Doloa who couldn't use soul skills. In his opinion, there was no outsider who could threaten Zhou Hui. However, the truth was that Zhou Hui had been killed by someone. And this person was the one who had asked the black-veiled woman to pass the message to him. Great King, this person's methods are a little strange. He doesn't seem to be restricted by the rules you set here. Although I didn't see his soul rings light up, his methods are indeed extraordinary. I've never seen them before. The man seemed to have seen through the king of massacre's thoughts. He hurriedly described what had happened in the slaughterhouse in detail. Interesting. It seems like I really have to make a trip down and see who this fellow is. After hearing the man's description, the king of massacre was interested. He waved his hand, and a thick dark red liquid flew into his mouth. Upon closer inspection, there was a huge blood pool in front of him in the darkness. It was filled with viscous blood. The king of massacre opened his mouth and swallowed the blood into his stomach. In the dim light, 2 fangs could be vaguely seen. 15 minutes later, 3 figures walked into the slaughterhouse. Under the purplish-blue light, the figure in front was revealed. This was a face that couldn't be described as handsome, but it was filled with rigidity. The scar on his right cheek that was made by an unknown weapon was particularly obvious, and the 2 symmetrical fangs in his mouth gave off a gloomy feeling. "He's here!" Chu Bei stood up from his chair and focused his attention on the King of Massacre. Although he was smiling, there was an indescribable feeling in his heart. The King of Massacre in front of him was his target. He was also a rank 1 proxy on the list given by the system. Besides being the ruler of the slaughterhouse, he had another identity. Tang San's great-grandfather, the founder of the Clear Sky sect. His name was Tang Qin, and he was one of the 3 ultimate Doluo. He had once defeated the Angel Doluo, Thousand Dao Flow, on Clear Sky Peak, and became the strongest person on the continent. Chapter 204. After breaking through to level 99, Tang Qin met the High Priestess of the Sea God's Island, Bai Saishi. After sparring all day, he fell deeply in love with Bai Saishi. When he left, he even made a promise that he would not return until he became a god. Unfortunately, in order to become a god, he was harmed by the Rakshasa god during the 8th test of the Azura 9 tests, and lost his mind. In the end, he became the King of Massacre in the City of Massacre. "You're looking for me?" The King of Massacre looked at Chu Bei, who was sitting on the stage, and let out a cold laugh. He flew up to the stage unhurriedly. "This is the King of Massacre, the ruler of the City of Massacre? After so many years, I finally see the real person. As expected of the King of Massacre. That sharp and dense killing intent is far from what we can compare to. If the King of Massacre fights with that person later, do you think we should go and help? If the King of Massacre takes a fancy to us and we can become his trusted aide, that would be amazing. You can forget about it. Let's not talk about whether existences at their level have any dignity. Even if you, a soul ancestor who can't even use soul skills, went up to help, what difference would you be from an ant?" Everyone in the spectator stands turned to look at the King of Massacre. Their eyes were blazing with passion, and their eyes were shining brightly. "I'm here to ask you to become my first-class agent and help me build a business empire." Facing Tang Qin, who had lost his mind, Chu Bei's calm voice was not mixed with any emotional fluctuations. "Boss, the first-class agent you're talking about is the King of Massacre." "Heavens!" Hearing Chu Bei's words, Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan were the most emotional. Their mouths were wide open, and their eyes were wide open. They never thought that the first-class agent they were looking for would be the ruler of the City of Massacre. Business empire? In the City of Massacre, money has always been useless. As for your so-called first-class agent, this king has no interest at all. As for Tang Qin, he first let out a cold snort, then his tone suddenly changed. His voice was filled with thick killing intent. "First, you killed my guards and barged into the capital of slaughter. Then, you caused trouble in the Hell's slaughterhouse and killed one of my managers and 2 deacons. After so many years, you are the first person who dares to disregard this king's rules." Tang Qin glanced at the 3 dismembered corpses on the table that were emitting a strong smell of blood. His cold gaze locked onto Chu Bei. As soon as his cold voice fell, a large red fog of blood spread out with him as the center. In a short while, it enveloped the entire Hell's slaughterhouse. From time to time, the sound of soul power exploding could be heard in the bloody air. Mysterious runes flickered in his palm and a golden halo appeared. In the halo, a huge fist made of intertwined energy appeared out of thin air. The surface of the fist was also pulsating with runes, and it went to meet Tang Chen's claws. Boom! The fist evolved from the Do's secret met Tang Chen's claws, and there was an earth-shattering bang. At the point of collision, countless dark cracks appeared in the void. The terrifying aftermath spread out, and the group of people closest to the spectator stand bore the brunt of it. Before they could react, the blood in their chests surged, and they spat out blood. In the arena, after the violent collision, the energy fist that appeared out of thin air returned to the halo. As for Tang Chen, he was sent flying. However, just as Tang Chen was about to hit the outer wall, his wings swung backward like sharp blades. After using the reverse thrust to stabilize his body, he leaned forward and swept toward Chu Bei again. This time, Tang Chen retracted his hands. His body was in the air, and his movements were as smooth as flowing water. He lifted his left leg, which was also filled with an evil aura. After avoiding the circle of light in front of Chu Bei, it was like a giant axe falling from the sky and sweeping towards Chu Bei's head. In the face of Tang Chen's attack again, Chu Bei smiled knowingly and remained calm. Without even looking at Tang Chen's flying leg, the mysterious runes around his body evolved into a sharp sword light with a wave of his right hand. The sword light slashed horizontally to meet Tang Chen's attack. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. The sword light and the blood-red light intertwined, and the sizzling sound was endless. Tang Chen's attack was blocked again. He flapped his wings and landed in his original position, not in a hurry to attack again. Then, his cold eyes looked at Chu Bei again. He frowned, and it was not difficult to see that his expression was more serious. After 2 probing attacks, he was sure that his opponent's soul power was not below his. Looking at his opponent's calm and composed appearance, he faintly felt that his opponent's soul power was above his. Why did the King of Massacre stop? Is this person's strength really so terrifying? He can't even take down the King of Massacre? Judging from the 2 collisions just now, the King of Massacre does seem to be at a disadvantage. Where did this person come from? He can actually defeat the King of Massacre. It's hard to say who will win now. After all, the King of Massacre only used his soul power in the previous attack. He didn't even use his martial soul. Anyway, this person is destined to leave his name in the City of Massacre for eternity. I just don't know what he meant by building a business empire. After the spectators saw that Tang Chen's 2 attacks had failed, they were all shocked. When they looked at Chu Bei again, they were even more surprised. As for Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan, there was only admiration for Chu Bei in their eyes. The King of Massacre was able to kill 2 titled Doluo. Without even thinking, they knew that his strength was extremely terrifying. However, even such a strong existence could not gain any advantage in front of their boss. The massacre domain that enveloped the entire massacre arena did not have any effect on the 3 of them. It was as if it did not exist. This was because when the blood fog spread around them, a strange aura surged from their boss's body. It engulfed their bodies and forced the blood fog to retreat. You do have some tricks up your sleeve. No wonder you dare to ignore the rules of the City of Massacre. Tang Chen focused his gaze on Chu Bei. I'm a little puzzled. Why aren't you affected by the massacre domain? What you did earlier should be a soul skill, right? Chu Bei did not answer the King of Massacre's question. Instead, he smiled and asked, Why? Are you giving up on attacking me? Arrogant! Seeing Chu Bei's playful expression, Tang Chen shouted coldly again. He clenched his fists tightly. In the spectators' stand, everyone's pupils shrank when they saw the number and color of Tang Chen's soul rings. Their mouths were agape as they expressed their astonishment. 8 black and 1 red. How can this be? 8 10,000-year soul rings and 100,000-year soul ring. How did he do it? How can he absorb the first 3 10,000-year soul rings? Not to mention the physical requirements of a 10,000-year soul ring, how did he survive the spiritual shock? The King of Massacre has completely broken my understanding of soul rings. Just 8 black and 1 red should be enough to intimidate even titled Doluo. Come to think of it, what rank is the King of Massacre at? In my opinion, he's definitely above rank 96. Everyone's attention was focused on Tang Chen. Before they could recover from their shock, his martial soul pushed the atmosphere in the massacre arena to a new climax. Chapter 205. In the slaughterhouse, countless pairs of eyes stared at Tang Chen's palm. The red light in his palm condensed into the shape of a hammer. As the soul ring flashed, the red hammer became bigger and bigger. Countless beautiful demonic patterns shone on the surface of the hammer. Clear! Clear Sky Hammer! What does the King of Massacre have to do with the Clear Sky sect? Is he from the Clear Sky sect? That can't be. If the King of Massacre is really from the Clear Sky sect, then the Clear Sky sect is not weaker than the Martial Soul Hall. Why would it hide from the world? Perhaps only the King of Massacre himself knows what kind of relationship there is between the two of them. Someone in the slaughterhouse recognized the hammer Martial Soul in Tang Chen's palm and shouted in shock. Other than the people in the spectators' stand, the black-veiled lady, Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the rest were all shocked when they saw Tang Chen's martial soul. If it was said that the only person who remained calm in the entire Hell's slaughterhouse was Chu Bei. Boss, his martial soul is the same as mine! Tang San's eyes widened. After confirming it again, he opened his left hand and a hammer martial soul appeared in his palm. Compared to the red hammer in Tang Chen's palm, Tang San's hammer martial soul seemed to have shrunk. Even the patterns on the hammer were the same. Is the Clear Sky Hammer the name of this martial soul? What does the hidden Clear Sky sect have to do with me? Also, why are the first few soul rings of the King of Massacre 10,000-year soul rings? Hearing the discussions around him, Tang San looked up at Chu Bei and waited for him to explain. Chu Bei patted Tang San's head and said, "His soul rings were not 10,000-year soul rings at the beginning. They were added as a reward when he accepted the Azure God's 9 tests." Azure God's 9 tests? What's that? Wang Fan asked. It's a test left behind by the Azure God. It's not just the Azure God. Other gods, such as the Sea God and the Angel God, will have a corresponding test when they are looking for their successors. Those who pass will be given a corresponding reward. Increasing the age of your soul rings is one of the rewards. When he spoke up to hear, Chu Bei's gaze swept past Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan before he continued. All of you have only just begun on the path of cultivation. The so-called end point isn't to become a titled Doluo. Beyond that, there are gods who have entered rank 100 or even surpassed rank 100. Boss, you still haven't told me why my martial soul is the Clear Sky Hammer. Tang San asked the question that he wanted to know the most. Chu Bei smiled but did not say anything. His gaze returned to Tang Chen. At this time, Tang Chen's aura had risen to a critical value and completely stabilized. The next moment, Tang Chen's figure moved. The wings on his back flapped, and his body suddenly spun. With himself as the center, a tornado formed by blood mist instantly rose around him. At the same time, the huge Clear Sky Hammer in his hand danced rhythmically. Wherever the hammer passed, the void collapsed. Slender black lightning flashed around the hammer. The lightning and the red blood mist intertwined and merged before finally converging into the huge hammer. In a moment, Tang Chen's Clear Sky Hammer was wrapped in a layer of hammer shadow that was about twice its size. As the lightning and red blood mist surged in, the hammer's shadow gradually solidified. Azura's hammer! Tang Chen's roar could be heard from the blood-red tornado. As the roar faded away, an incomparably huge hammer emerged from the tornado and smashed down toward Chu Bei's location. Behind the huge hammer, there were several hammer shadows. Every time the hammer's shadows overlapped, the might of the huge hammer would increase by a bit. When all the hammer shadows overlapped on the huge hammer suddenly erupted with a gorgeous black and red light. Its aura was monstrous. Boss, be careful. Feeling the terrifying might of the Clear Sky Hammer, Wang Fan clenched his fists. There was a hint of fear in his nervous expression. From his eyes it could be seen that he was worried that Chu Bei would not be able to take Tang Chen's hammer. In his heart, although Chu Bei was extremely powerful, the strength displayed by the King of Massacre in front of him was also extremely terrifying. Especially the other party's soul rings, which were 8 10,000-year soul rings and 100,000-year soul ring. Compared to Wang Fan, Tang San and Xiao Wu were calmer. However, they also clenched their fists slightly and looked solemn. Facing Tang Chen's hammer, Chu Bei stood up from his chair. When the smile on his face disappeared and his expression became serious, his aura rose to another level in an instant. Buzz buzz, Chu Bei's hands danced at the same time. Mysterious runes danced and performed one of the 9 secrets, the Doe's secret. Amidst the buzzing sound, the mysterious runes quickly intertwined and merged until they formed a huge axe. Although the huge axe was not as dazzling as the clear sky hammer in Tang Chen's hand, it floated quietly in the air like the king of heaven and earth. Whoosh! Amidst the sharp sound of something breaking through the air, the huge axe disappeared from its original position and went up against the clear sky hammer. In the spectators' stand, everyone stared at the clear sky hammer and the huge runic axe. At this moment, everyone's hearts were in their throats. The atmosphere in the arena became deathly silent once again. Boom! The blood-red light and the mysterious runes instantly merged into one and exploded with a loud bang. Amidst the earth-shattering sound, everyone in the spectators' stand felt a huge wave of energy rush towards them. All they could do was to curl their bodies together as much as possible to resist the terrifying shockwaves from the collision. However, even so, figures were still thrown into the air like bullets. They were ruthlessly smashed against the walls of the massacre arena. Some of them who were below the level of Soul Elder had already lost consciousness while their bodies were still in the air. As for those who were of a higher level, even if they still retained consciousness, their blood was churning. Their faces were pale, and their breathing became rapid and messy. The arena, which was made up of black iron stones, was turned into nothingness by the collision of the two. Only the small area where Tang San and Xiao Wu were sitting was left. Good, very good. How many years has it been? You're the first person to hurt me. Suddenly, the tornado in the arena dissipated. A figure was sent flying backwards and smashed into the walls of the pit like a cannonball. Even the solid stone walls couldn't stop the figure from sinking in. The figure sank in by a meter and went through the entire wall. A chilling laugh rang out in the massacre arena. Under the countless gazes of the spectators, the figure that had sunk into the wall returned to the arena. Right now, the king of massacre was in an incomparably miserable state. His clothes were torn apart, revealing the scarlet wounds on his body. You're very strong. Strong enough that you were lucky enough to die under the Azura sword. Tang Chen suddenly calmed down. His originally blood-red eyes were now clear and bright. The bloodthirsty aura he gave off before was gone. In the blink of an eye, Tang Chen's aura underwent a tremendous change. It was as if he was a completely different person. At the same time, his face also changed. Although he still looked like a middle-aged man, he was much more handsome. At this moment, all the evilness of the king of massacre seemed to have been replaced by righteousness. His black hair fluttered behind him even though there was no wind. As he stood there, he no longer looked as frivolous as before. His eyes were as calm as a mountain. Azura sword, appear! With a loud shout, Tang Chen's aura rose again. It was even stronger than before. Almost at the same time, a red shadow that was filled with boundless murderous intent flashed behind him. The clear sky hammer that Tang Chen was holding seemed to have melted and transformed into a huge blood-red sword that was more than 2 meters long. Azura exterminates the world! The king of massacre held the sword with both hands. After merging with the red shadow behind him, the heavy sword slashed down from above with the momentum of raising fire towards the huge rune axe that Chu Bei had conjured. Chu Bei looked at the Azura sword that had the power to destroy the heavens and earth. With a thought, he exchanged for the second upper level 10 commodity, the Berserk skill. Unlike most commodities, the Berserk skill could be found in any level 1 commodity. However, different levels had different amplifications. Furthermore, the amplification effect only lasted for a short 7 seconds. After successfully exchanging for the Berserk skill, a beautiful purple light surged out from Chu Bei's body like a river. In an instant, Chu Bei's tyrannical aura reached another peak. In the next moment, Chu Bei stretched out his right hand and placed his palm on the handle of the huge rune axe. Buzz buzz, the rune axe that was wrapped in a gorgeous purple light seemed to have evolved. With a buzzing sound, it doubled in size. Then, it faced the Azura sword. Rumble rumble, the massacre field exploded. The roar filled the void and shook the heavens and the earth. Under the sound waves that were mixed with terrifying energy, the people in the spectator stands covered their ears in pain. Their expressions were extremely distorted. Their ferocious expressions looked as if they had suffered a great destruction. When the trembling sound completely disappeared, there were only a few people left standing in the ruined spectator stands. Looking at these people, they were all soul sages and above. Those who had fallen were bleeding from their 7 orifices. They had died a tragic death. The few survivors stabilized their bodies, and when they looked at the battlefield again, their expressions suddenly froze, and their pupils suddenly shrank. The ruler of the city of massacre, the king of massacre, has been defeated. In the battlefield, the bright light disappeared. The red blood mist dissipated. The Azura sword and the huge axe wrapped in purple light disappeared. There was a huge pit that was several meters deep in the spacious ground. There was a figure lying in the pit. Looking at it carefully, it was the king of massacre, Tang Chen. At the edge of the pit, there was a well-dressed youth with his hands behind his back. He looked at the king of massacre in the pit with a calm expression. Why is this? Tang Chen spat out a mouthful of blood as he muttered under his breath. His eyes were locked onto Chu Bei. His gaze was filled with unwillingness and even more confusion. He did not understand why he had been defeated. He had used the power of Azura and summoned the Azura sword, but he had still been defeated. A rank 99 peak Dolu. You are indeed very strong. With the power of the Azura sword, you have stepped into the demigod realm. In the entire continent, there will not be a second person who can defeat you. Chu Bei looked at Tang Chen and said calmly. Rank 100. You have taken that step. Tang Chen seemed to have thought of something. His body trembled. You are a god! Chu Bei lifted Tang Chen out of the pit with his right hand. He nodded and smiled. So, your defeat is justified. After using the battle secret of the 9 secret words, coupled with the berserk technique, and 2 top-grade rank 10 items, he had indeed stepped into the god realm of the Doluo continent in 7 seconds. These 7 seconds might be nothing to a rank 100 god, but to an ultimate Doluo like Tang Chen, it was fatal. God? Are there really gods in this world? I didn't believe it before, but I do now. After all, I saw it with my own eyes. Maybe this is the only way. No wonder the king of massacre was defeated. It turns out that he met a god. I actually saw a true god. My 30 years in the city of massacre were not in vain. The few surviving soul sages in the spectator stand were in disbelief when they heard the conversation between Chu Bei and Tang Chen. Boss, he really is a rank 100 god. Tang San, Xiao Wu, and Wang Fan looked at each other. Their breathing became rapid. What is your godly seat? Angel? Culinary god? Herculean god? War god? Tang Chen stood in front of Chu Bei with difficulty. He looked straight into his eyes and asked, My godly seat is already in the past. I am now just a businessman who wants to build a business empire. Chu Bei said calmly. If I help you, what benefits will I get? After knowing that Chu Bei was a god, Tang Chen's aura was obviously restrained. I can let you know who you are. A smile appeared on Chu Bei's face. Hearing this, Tang Chen's body trembled violently. He was stunned at first, but when he reacted, he grabbed Chu Bei's arm excitedly. You know who I am? I can help you find all the memories before you became the king of massacre. Chu Bei's eyes narrowed as he said in a deep voice. But before that, you have to become my first-class agent first. What do you want me to do? As long as I can do it, I will do my best to cooperate. Tang Chen did not hesitate and immediately spoke. Obviously, he desperately wanted to find his past memories, no matter the cost. Chu Bei looked at Tang Chen indifferently, and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, a cloud of mist entered between Tang Chen's eyebrows. This was information about the first-class agent. After sorting out the information flow, Tang Chen put on the agent ring that Chu Bei threw to him. Host has successfully signed a contract with the first-class agent, Tang Chen. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress 57%, progress 58%, progress 59%. The moment Tang Chen dripped blood on the ring, the system's voice sounded. When the system's voice disappeared, the cultivation conversion progress increased from 56% to 66%. As for his soul power, it also jumped from a level 68 Soul Emperor to a level 75 Soul Sage. Can you help me find my memories now? Tang Chen's gaze was fixed on Chu Bei, his eyes full of anticipation. Chu Bei did not say much. With a flick of his finger, a jade bottle containing a sky blue liquid flew in front of Tang Chen. This is the 37-star water. Drink it. Chu Bei looked at Tang Chen calmly. Tang Chen nodded in response. Then, he grabbed the jade bottle and poured the sky blue liquid into his mouth without hesitation. When the liquid entered his mouth, Tang Chen frowned at first, then slowly closed his eyes. His body emitted a demonic blue light, and his body floated in the air involuntarily. Chapter 206. After a long time, Tang Chen opened his eyes. Compared to before, Tang Chen's eyes were shining with wisdom at this moment. Thank you? Tang Chen clasped his fist at Chu Bei. I need to leave for a while. When I return, I will do my best to help you build a famous business empire in the continent. Are you going to look for Bai Saishi? Chu Bei's lips curled up, and his calm voice entered Tang Chen's ears. Hearing this, Tang Chen trembled slightly. After recovering from his shock, he nodded. Before you leave, expel all the villains in the town above. The store's headquarters will be located here, Chu Bei said calmly. Okay. Tang Chen nodded and looked at the 4 deacons not far away, whose faces were still filled with shock. Pass down this king's order. Before sunset today, clear out all the residents of an E-town and tidy up every courtyard. As for the passage to the massacre city, change it from inside the city to outside the city and announce it. Yes, great king! The 4 deacons bowed to Tang Chen, then glanced at Chu Bei fearfully, and immediately retreated. After giving the order, Tang Chen disappeared and reappeared in front of Tang San. Looking at the king of massacre in front of him, Tang San instinctively took a few steps back, his face full of vigilance. Little guy, I look forward to your growth. After his smiling voice floated in the air, Tang Chen flew up into the sky and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. Boss, what is the relationship between me and the king of massacre? Tang San looked at Chu Bei sincerely with a pleading face. Your father's grandfather. Chu Bei looked in the direction where Tang Chen had disappeared and said faintly. Tang San's face immediately turned stiff. When he came back to his senses, his eyes were filled with astonishment, and his expression was full of disbelief. The king of massacre is my great-grandfather. Tang San raised his eyes and stared at Chu Bei, a puzzled look appearing on his face. Then why is my father just an ordinary blacksmith? About your father, you can ask him yourself in the future. Moreover, he is not ordinary. Chu Bei did not say anything more and did not say anything else. 15 minutes later. Do any of you know what happened in the killing field just now? Why are there so many corpses? Why are there so many guards leaving the inner city and heading towards the outer city? Were they going to leave the city of massacre and head to the outside world? What had happened in the outside world to cause such a huge commotion? Is it possible that the martial spirit palace is attacking us? Did he go through a terrifying battle? Who is fighting here? Don't ask about things you shouldn't ask about. The more you know, the sooner you die. Not long after Chu Bei's group of 4 left, more people arrived at the Hell slaughterhouse that had already turned into ruins. These people smelled the pungent smell of blood in the air and looked at the miserable corpses. Their faces were full of confusion. Starluo Empire, Starluo Imperial City. The most prosperous section of Changxiang Street was lined with mansions of various sizes. These mansions were named after their surnames. Their owners were all upper-class nobles in the Starluo Empire. Among these nobles, the Zhu clan had the closest relationship with the imperial family. Zhu Mansion. Looking around, this mansion was very big. The mansion was lush with beautiful trees and colorful flowers. There were fake mountains, small ponds, jade lotus roots, and pink water lotuses. They all complemented each other, making it seem peaceful and beautiful. On the intersecting bluestone roads, there were guards with swords and busy maids walking to and fro. At the end of one of the roads, there was an exquisite little house. Standing in the house, the first thing that came into view was a pink and purple curtain. Under the curtain was a soft wooden bed with exquisite carvings and decorations. At the end of the bed were tassels that swayed gently. Looking to the side, there was a guillotine in the corner, and a bronze mirror on a wooden dressing table. The whole house was so fresh and comfortable. "Father, no matter what, I have to find that merchant." The one who spoke was a little girl who was only 5 or 6 years old. She was wearing a long black dress. Although she was young, she already gave off a cold and distant feeling. "Zhu Qing, that person can take a fancy to Mubai, but it doesn't mean that he can take a fancy to you." The middle-aged man sighed faintly. Ever since Dai Mubai returned to the imperial palace as a rank 51 Soul King, he had caused a huge uproar in the palace. In just 3 days he had broken through from a rank 26 Soul Grand Master to a rank 51 Soul King. It was simply unimaginable. Especially when he took out a treasure box that was worth 800,000 yuan. It was so miraculous that it made people speechless. It could be said that they both loved and hated it. Some of the ministers didn't get anything, but some were able to get 2 pills. After consuming them, a rank 52 Soul King could actually break through 2 ranks. And from what Dai Mubai said, it was all because of the merchant who took him away and signed him as a first-class agent. "Father, how do you know if you don't try? You know my personality. Even you can't change my mind when I decide on something." The little girl looked straight at the middle-aged man as she spoke. "Forget it. Since you want to find him, let Uncle Hai follow you," the middle-aged man said firmly. "Thank you, father!" The little girl went forward and hugged the middle-aged man. On the other side, 7 treasures glazed sect. "Senior brothers and sisters who are soul elders, don't miss out on this opportunity. A rank 4 treasure box costs 250,000 soul coins. It's a profit if you buy it. Come and take a look." In the martial arts field, Ning Rongrong squatted on a stone chair. She waved her white and tender hands at the disciples of the sect who were practicing martial arts and shouted loudly. On the stone table in front of her, there were 10 identical square boxes arranged in an orderly manner. Rongrong is back. Wasn't she taken away by the mysterious person who defeated Elder Jian? Let's not talk about why she's back first. What the hell is she doing now? Listening to her shouting, it seems like she's selling boxes? Let's go and take a look. I want to see how she's going to trick us. Ning Rongrong's shouting quickly attracted the disciples of the sect who were practicing. In a few seconds, the stone table was surrounded by people. "Senior brothers and sisters, if you have money, why don't you take a gamble? Especially those who are soul elders. If you don't buy it, you won't lose out, and you won't be tricked. If you get it, you'll make a killing." Ning Rongrong rubbed her palms. She looked like she was directly asking the disciples around her for money. "Rongrong, you want 250,000 soul coins for just 1 box? What's in there?" The group of disciples curiously sized up the 10 square boxes on the table. They couldn't see anything special about them, so they looked at Ning Rongrong with puzzled expressions. I got these from Grandpa Jian and Grandpa Gu. They said that each box is worth 1,000,000 soul coins. Ning Rongrong's big eyes rolled around as she made up a story. Elder Jian and Elder Gu gave them to you? Is that true? The group of disciples looked at Ning Rongrong suspiciously. Senior brothers and sisters, why would I, Rongrong, lie to you? Do I look like someone who lacks money? Ning Rongrong blinked her eyes. Hearing Ning Rongrong's words, the surrounding disciples looked at each other. They were obviously tempted. Give me one. I want one too. After a long while, 3 disciples stepped forward and took out 25 soul coins each. Almost at the same time, the ring on Ning Rongrong's finger emitted a blue light. In the next moment, the 75 soul coins disappeared. Seeing this, the surrounding disciples were dumbfounded. Their faces were full of disbelief. Senior brothers, quickly pick one. Ning Rongrong was very enthusiastic. After the 3 disciples who paid nodded, they picked a square box one after another. Rongrong, this box doesn't have an opening. Just as a disciple opened his mouth to ask, a loud bang was heard, and the square box exploded. At the same time, the other 2 square boxes exploded as well. The square boxes disappeared, and the words, "Thank you for your patronage," were floating in the air. Haha, there's really nothing. These 3 idiots, they actually believed Rongrong's words. It's harder to get back the money that has fallen into Rongrong's pocket.